Hey guys, tonight we're doing something potentially unwise. You're going to wake up in the dead of winter in Colonial America, the 1700s. No electricity, no insulation, no TikTok. Just you, some brittle trees, and the eerie silence of snow. Oh, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Not because you're weak, but because, well, the odds are just spectacularly against you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know, what city are you in, and what time is it where you're watching this? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's cold. Not modern cold, not forgot my gloves, or heated seat broken cold. It's bone deep, can't feel your ears, your breath is a threat kind of cold. You open your eyes and blink up into a sky the colour of dirty linen. Your nose is the first to rebel, stinging sharply as you inhale the brittle air. Then your fingers start screaming. You're lying in a shallow drift of snow, your clothes soggy and completely unprepared for this kind of weather. Jeans, sneakers, maybe a hoodie. It's laughable, really. People here wear layers of wool and fur just to go to the outhouse. Around you is a thin stand of leafless trees, their branches like clawed hands reaching toward nothing. Somewhere nearby, a crow lets out a single dry caw. The forest smells like pine needles, distant smoke, and damp decay. You sit up, breath fogging in front of you, and realize two things at once. One, you're very, very cold, and two, you're very, very lost. Then, crunching footsteps. You spin around, heart thudding. From between the trees comes a figure in a heavy wool coat, wide-brimmed hat dusted in snow, holding a long stick. No, a musket. His eyes narrow beneath a thick brow, and he says something you don't fully understand. It's English, but it sounds like it's been left out in the sun too long. Twisted, formal. He calls you friend, but doesn't smile. You try to say something, maybe ask where you are, but your voice comes out in a croak. He gestures sharply, points with the musket. You follow him, not because you trust him, but because the alternative is freezing to death where you stand. You trudge behind him, each step sinking ankle-deep in snow. Your toes are numb, your jeans soaked. The wind keeps catching the back of your neck, whispering through the trees like it knows how close you are to collapse. Eventually the trees part, revealing a clearing dotted with squat timber-framed buildings. Smoke rises from chimneys, curling against the cold sky. There's no real road, just churned-up mud and slush, packed down by cartwheels and boots. A wooden palisade half rings the village, the logs lashed together with rawhide and frozen moss. It looks like someone built a wall out of tree trunks in a hurry. People are outside, chopping wood, hauling buckets, yelling at kids. They're bundled in rough, mismatched layers, cloaks, mittens, caps, scarves. Most of the children wear dresses regardless of gender, and none of them are smiling. A dog barks hoarsely and runs up to sniff you, then runs away just as fast. You draw stares, lots of them, especially at your clothes. Your hoodie and sneakers might as well be a spacesuit. A few of the older folks cross themselves. A little boy straight up drops his stick and runs off yelling something about witchery. Your guide leads you to a squat building that smells like wet hay, smoke, and boiled turnips. Inside, it's dim and cramped. A large hearth blazes at one end, casting flickering light on the plank walls and the bundled shapes of half a dozen people huddled around it. You sit near the fire, and it's not until your skin starts to tingle painfully, thawing from the cold, that you realize how close you were to the edge. One woman hands you a mug of something warm. It tastes like watery broth laced with onion and regret. Still, you drink. Someone wraps a coarse wool blanket around your shoulders. You breathe in the scent, smoke, lanolin, and a hint of old sweat. Surprisingly comforting. You don't know their names, they don't know yours, but you're not dead, and for now, that's enough. As the fire pops and the room grows quieter, you feel your limbs again. Not fully, but enough. You curl deeper into the blanket, the weight of history, quite literally, settling onto your shoulders. Outside, the snow still falls. The morning, or what passes for it, arrives in shades of blue and grey, a hazy light that slips in through the crooked wooden shutters like a reluctant apology. You're stiff, your body still half frozen from your grand entrance yesterday, but you're warm enough now to feel uncomfortable. The wool blanket wrapped around you itches like it's personally offended by your skin. Your hosts stir, stretching and grumbling. Someone is already poking at the hearth, coaxing the dying embers back into life. You slept on a straw-stuffed mattress on the floor, if you could call it sleeping. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind outside felt like something sneaking closer. But you're still here, alive, probably with fleas now, but alive. The man who found you, let's just call him Thomas, because everyone here is probably named Thomas, John or Mary, motions for you to get up. His eyebrows seem permanently furrowed, as if his face came pre-installed with judgment. He leads you to a door at the back of the common house, which opens into a room filled with so much wood smoke, it's like trying to breathe inside a chimney. You step into the common house kitchen, or at least what serves as one. There's no division of space, just a hearth, some rough tables, and racks hung with herbs, tools, and... is that jerky? Or something more mysterious? There's already activity. A woman, you think her name might be Eliza, grinds something in a wooden bowl, while a young boy stirs a pot suspended over the fire. It smells like cornmeal mush, burned slightly on the bottom. Someone else is slicing dried apples with the speed and precision of someone who has done this 500 mornings in a row, and probably will do 500 more. You're expected to help. No one says this aloud. They just hand you a bucket and point to the door. Water. You gather from the combination of the bucket and the vague gesture toward the frigid outdoors that you're now the designated ice fetcher. You make your way to the well, teeth chattering. The path is slick, the snow trodden down into a half-frozen sludge that wants very badly to take your ankles out from under you. As you walk, more of the settlement reveals itself. Clustered buildings, many of them leaning suspiciously, as if they're holding each other up out of sheer peer pressure. Chickens peck at something invisible in the snow. A horse exhales great clouds of steam, staring at you like it knows you don't belong here. At the well, another man is already cranking up a bucket. He glances at you, your sneakers again, your face, your general vibe of "I'm not from here." He spits into the snow and mutters, "Stranger," like it's an accusation and a prayer. You draw your own water, which is harder than it looks. The crank is stiff with cold, and the weight of the bucket nearly yanks your arm out of socket when it clears the lip of the well. By the time you stagger back into the common house, your hands are burning from the cold. Eliza doesn't thank you. She just takes the bucket and starts ladling water into the pot. Breakfast is simple. Corn mush, a piece of dense, cold bread, and a watery cider that tastes slightly better than melted leaves. You eat on a bench with 3 other people, none of whom speak to you except to hand over the salt, which comes in a weird little cone that you have to scrape. One of them stares openly at your hoodie the whole time. And here's the thing. The common house isn't just a kitchen. It's everything. Meeting hall, hospital, punishment chamber, you name it. In smaller or newer settlements, it's also where half the population sleeps in winter, huddled together like miserable sardines. Privacy? No such thing. You sneeze, 10 people hear it. You fart, 20 people judge you. Don't even think about snoring. In towns where the houses were still being built, or in cases where fire or illness had swept through, the common house was the backup plan. And in the 1700s, you always needed a backup plan. Today it seems the building is being used for all purposes at once. A man with a bandaged leg lies near the hearth, groaning softly. A young girl recites her alphabet in a corner. Someone's butchering what might be a rabbit on a table near the back. You're pulled into it. A woman, possibly a midwife, possibly a wizard, hard to tell, grabs your wrist and starts asking you strange questions. Are you married? Do you know how to sew? Can you read? Are you a Quaker? Do you hear voices? You don't answer fast enough, and she eyes you with suspicion before muttering something about unsettled spirits. You're pretty sure you've been diagnosed with some sort of 18th century condition. Congratulations. Let's drop a fact in here. Colonial common houses were essential survival hubs, especially in winter. They were a melting pot, literally and figuratively, of chores, sickness, politics, and rumour. And yes, in many cases they were the courtroom and the jail. You could be eating your supper next to someone awaiting trial for theft or heresy. Bit of light dinner entertainment. Now for your quirky twist, people often shared spoons and cups, and not in a cute couple goals kind of way. The idea of germs wasn't really a thing yet. If someone offered you a sip of their cider, or a bite from their wooden spoon, it was considered rude not to accept. Hope you're cool with communal mouth bacteria. And the scholarly debate? Historians still argue about just how egalitarian these spaces were. Were they genuinely communal, or were they coded with invisible hierarchies? Did women have equal say in how things were run? Depends on which colony you're talking about and which diary you believe. As the morning drags into midday, though the light never really changes, the tasks continue. You're not allowed to sit still for long. Someone hands you a broom and points at the floor, which is mostly dirt and straw. Another person drags you outside to help chop wood, which you do very badly. The axe bounces. You nearly lose a toe. Laughter erupts from a group of boys who are either 10 years old or just really stunted by malnutrition. By the time the sun begins to slide toward the tree line, you're aching in places you didn't know you had muscles. But something strange has happened. You've stopped shivering. The cold is still there, always there, but now it feels manageable. You've earned your place for now. A warm corner by the fire, a second helping of mush, a nod from the old man who scowled at you earlier. Tomorrow might be worse, but tonight you're part of the body heat pile. Sleep comes in fits, like a fire that refuses to catch. One moment you're dozing against a rough timber wall, your head jerking forward like it's trying to escape your neck. The next, someone coughs, or snores, or shifts on the creaky floorboards and wakes you again. You swear one guy is having an argument in Latin with himself in his sleep. Still, you manage something close to rest until the room begins to stir again. No alarm clock, just instinct, creaky joints, and the brutal consistency of colonial routine. The light outside is barely a whisper, that icy pre-dawn blue that makes everything feel unreal. You sit up, back cracking, and try not to groan too loudly. Today begins with the same symphony of scraping, boiling, and muttering, but you're not even through your first ladle of mush when Eliza slaps a chunk of dry linen in your hands and tells you to help clean. Not just dishes, everything. The hearth tools, the pots, the table, the walls somehow. The kitchen isn't just a kitchen. It's the nerve centre of the house, where gossip simmers hotter than stew, and your place in the social pecking order is measured by how close you're allowed to stand to the fire, your still outer circle. Warm enough not to die, but not warm enough to feel like you belong. After breakfast, Thomas appears again and mutters something about decent clothes. Apparently your hoodie is giving people spiritual hives. You're led outside to a shed that's basically a glorified wooden box with a leaking roof and an alarming smell of mould, where someone hands you a bundle of scratchy brownish-grey garments. They're stiff, like they've been frozen and rethawed a dozen times. You strip out of your modern clothes, trying to avoid eye contact with the chickens watching you, and pull on the woolens. Let's just say colonial fashion was more about survival than style. Your new look is something. A linen shirt that feels like sandpaper, wool breeches that itch in regions best left unmentioned. Over that, a long waistcoat slightly moth-chewed, woolen stockings that bunch around your knees, and a heavy cloak that smells like it once belonged to a sheep who smoked a pipe. Also, no underwear. Not the kind you're used to anyway. Colonial undergarments are a weird mix of biblical modesty and deal with it. Basically, you're freeballing it in the cold, held together by string and spite. For footwear, they give you a pair of hand-me-down leather shoes with wooden soles and zero arch support. You quickly discover that walking in them feels like balancing on 2 loaves of stale bread. No laces, just buckles, metal ones. That frees. Have fun. You also get a hat. Everyone wears hats. Hats are serious business. Lose your hat and someone will assume you've been cursed. Yours is a wool cap that hugs your head like an aggressive fungus. Warm though. Mercifully warm. Outside, the world is quietly brutal. Snow crunches under your new wooden hooves as you try not to fall into the slushy mix of dirt and ice that passes for a road. Smoke curls from chimneys. Children chase a half-deflated pig bladder with sticks, shrieking as they slip and tumble. The village itself is alive with motion. People hauling firewood, feeding animals, patching roofs with frozen moss and desperation. A woman hacks at a block of salted meat with a cleaver that looks older than America itself. And then there's you, waddling around like a stuffed turkey in borrowed clothes, trying not to draw attention. You pass a group of older men who nod at you with that grim colonial approval that says, "You look like you might not die today." One even offers you a sip from his mug. You hesitate because the mug looks like it hasn't been washed since the last witch trial. But declining would be rude, so you sip. It's warm, sour, Spicy, vaguely alcoholic. Cider maybe, with cloves, or crushed beetle, you're not sure. But it sets your chest on fire and clears out your sinuses in one go. Welcome to Colonial Beverages. Half the time you're not drinking for flavour, you're drinking for warmth, calories, and the vague hope that whatever's in there will kill the worms you probably have now. Back inside the common house, you're handed a bowl of something hot and murky that might be porridge, or rehydrated despair. You eat it anyway. Calories are calories. A girl, maybe 10, sits beside you and picks at the fraying edge of your cloak. She says nothing, just stares at you like you're a raccoon in people clothes. Eventually she speaks. You don't smell like anyone. Then she stands and walks away like she's dropped some kind of psychic bomb. You do sniff your sleeve after that. She's not wrong. As midday passes, your new clothes start to feel a little more normal. Your body heat has moulded them to your shape. You're no longer shivering constantly, and the itchiness fades into background noise. You can move your arms. Sort of. Your armpits are a war zone, but you've accepted that nothing from here on out will ever feel clean again. That afternoon, a man teaches you how to patch a pair of gloves using deer sinew and a curved needle. Your stitches are crooked, and your fingers bleed, but he pats your shoulder and mutters something about making do. It feels weirdly like praise. The sky darkens early, and the air sharpens into ice by late afternoon. Before sundown, everyone begins to retreat indoors, shuttering windows and bolting doors like they're preparing for a siege. Which, to be fair, they kind of are. Winter is the enemy. Every night is a battle. You hang your cloak by the fire and sit with your back against the stone hearth. The warmth seeps into your spine. Outside, the wind howls through the trees like a ghost with unfinished business. Someone plays a slow tune on a fife, the notes thin and wavery like smoke. Tonight you feel more invisible than intruder. The colonists no longer gawk. No one tries to interrogate your hoodie's strange symbols or asks why you can't milk a goat properly. You're still the stranger. But maybe now you're their stranger. Your fingers are still tingling when you wake up. Not from cold this time, but from sleeping on them wrong. A weird sort of progress. The hearth has burned low again, throwing just enough warmth to keep you from freezing into a commemorative statue of that one time you time-travelled stupidly. The room smells like smoked meat, scorched wool, and people. Just people. Layers of unwashed humanity, sharing close quarters and zero personal boundaries. Honestly, you're impressed no one has snapped yet. There's a baby somewhere in the room that has not stopped making tiny hiccup noises for what feels like 12 hours straight. You've started to name it in your head. You go with Dribbleton. You groan and sit up. Today's first task, getting dressed while trying to pretend you don't notice that literally everyone else is also getting dressed 2 feet away. Colonial America isn't big on privacy. If you're modest, you'd better get over that quickly, or else risk becoming the settlement's weird reclusive soap opera. Once again, you're in full colonial cosplay. Itchy wool shirt, lumpy breeches, suspiciously damp stockings, and your now slightly less offensive cloak. This time you get smart and wrap extra linen under your arms to prevent the chafe of doom. Small victories. Outside, it's the kind of cold that makes your eyelashes freeze together. The air has teeth. Your breath comes out in thick plumes as you follow Thomas, who has officially adopted you as his personal burden, toward the outskirts of the village. You're heading toward a small outbuilding where a man is stirring something in a huge cauldron. At first you think it's food, but the smell tells you otherwise. Soap, tallow, potpourri? Nope, it's some sort of dye. Nearby, bundles of clothing and animal pelts hang on wooden racks frozen stiff. Today's project, winter gear maintenance. Turns out colonial clothing wasn't just worn until it fell apart, it was relentlessly, obsessively maintained. Dyed, patched, re-dyed, repatched, shrunk back into shape by boiling water, stiffened with wax or fat to hold its form. You help dip a tunic into the dye vat, nearly tipping yourself in with it, and then learn how to stretch wet wool over a wooden frame so it doesn't dry into a weird potato shape. While you work, you listen to the locals talk. It's not idle chatter. It's half gossip, half disaster preparedness. One woman whispers about a child from the next town over who wandered too far and fell through the ice. Another man mutters about frost demons, which sounds like folklore until you realise he's dead serious. Still, it's not all doom. There's a surprising amount of laughter, even if most of it is dry and mildly unhinged. Jokes about who farted under the wool blanket last night. teasing a young boy for crying when a goose chased him. Someone tries to flirt with a girl by offering her a fur-lined hat. She takes it, calls him a fool, and wears the hat anyway. Once the dyeing and airing are done, Thomas takes you on a tour of acceptable winter wear. You thought you were already wearing everything. You were wrong. First, mittens, not gloves, mittens. Your fingers are communal now, made of felted wool, lined with rabbit fur, thick enough to make holding anything a joke. You feel like you're wearing oven mitts on both hands, and honestly, they might be oven mitts. Someone hands you a rope to tie around your neck so you don't lose them. Colonial mittens come with leashes. Next up, leg gaiters. Basically wool tubes with leather buttons that wrap around your lower legs to keep snow out. Your feet already feel like hooves. Now you've just doubled down on the centaur aesthetic. Then, underlayers. Apparently there are flannel undershirts people wear beneath their already horrific linen shirts. Yours feels like a damp towel wrapped in steel wool. Still better than nothing. And finally, winter wigs. Yes, wigs. Apparently some men still wear them in winter, stuffed under hats for extra warmth and maximum ridiculousness. You politely decline when someone tries to hand you one that smells like pickled leather and sadness. After dressing lessons come the trials of maintenance. You're handed a giant wooden comb and told to brush the cloak fibres so the lice don't nest too deep. That's a sentence you're going to remember forever. Another person shows you how to rub beeswax into the stitching of your mittens to waterproof them. By the end of the hour, your hands are sticky, your face is blotched with blue dye, and your self-esteem has plummeted to wet sock levels. Still, the clothing is growing on you, figuratively and literally. The more time you spend in this world, the more your old clothes feel like a joke. Fragile, pointless, stylish, but doomed. Here, survival is stitched, soaked, boiled, and mended over and over again. You start to appreciate how much work goes into the simplest things. By late afternoon, you've become a part of the rhythm. Folding dried cloaks, untangling a pile of hand-spun yarn, failing hilariously at darning socks. A teenage boy shows you how to use a bone needle to patch a glove and you impress him by not stabbing yourself. Progress. When the sun dips behind the tree line, the work stops abruptly. Not because it's done, nothing is ever done, but because once it gets dark, fingers stop working, eyes stop seeing, and the cold turns tasks into danger. You return to the common house, your new cloak tight around your shoulders. You smell like wool, dye, smoke, and beeswax. And probably moss. You look like a scarecrow that learned to walk. But when you step inside, no one laughs, no one blinks. You've become plausible. Dinner tonight is a kind of thick barley stew, warm and dense. Your spoon feels heavier than usual, maybe because for the first time you earned it. Outside, the wind is howling again, but inside, wrapped in layers of hard-won warmth, you finally stop clenching your jaw. Just for a moment. The snow is crunchier today. You can feel it under your wooden-soled shoes with every step, like walking on frosted cornflakes. It's early still, not quite dawn, and the sky has that eerie pre-sunrise glow, where everything looks like it's been dipped in silver. Steam drifts from chimneys, mixing with the pale mist that clings low to the ground like a nervous animal. Your breath fogs in front of you as you walk, trailing behind Thomas. Yes, he's still babysitting you like you're a half-trained goat, as he leads you out past the edge of the common house cluster. You pass through a crude wooden gate that creaks like it's hiding secrets, and beyond that, the real guts of the village. If the hearth is the heart of a colonial home, the village itself is the skeleton. Every splintered fence post, every mud-smeared path, every creaky barn beam, this is the brittle framework that's holding back death for one more winter, and you're about to help maintain it. Poorly. Your first stop is the well-worn stable where 2 oxen stand steaming in the cold, huge and unbothered. They stare at you like they're sizing you up for future use as a chew toy. One of them lets out a low, world-weary grunt and flicks its tail. These aren't cute storybook cows. These are beefy survival tanks. You're handed a pitchfork. Of course you are. Thomas points toward the hay that's matted with frozen droppings and gives you a look like, well, get to it. And so you do, clumsily, ineffectively, constantly second-guessing whether that's hay or just compacted sadness. By the time you finish shoveling manure that's half frozen and smells faintly like regret, you're sweating under your layers, and your back feels like it's been stepped on by an 18th century elephant. Someone claps you on the shoulder. You can't tell if it's praise or if they're checking to see if you've died standing up. The stable work is only the start. You're led past the meeting house, a 2-story, grim-looking structure with shuttered windows and a weather vane shaped like a rooster that looks deeply offended by the weather, and toward a row of houses that feel like they were slapped together by desperate men with more ambition than lumber. Each house is coated in a thin sheen of frost. Icicles hang from the eaves like teeth. Smoke seeps from their chimneys in slow, deliberate plumes. The whole place smells like wood smoke, boiled cabbage, and the occasional waft of unwashed feet. You're told to help patch gaps. With what, you ask? The answer: mud, straw, and whatever else you can jam into the holes. You're given a wooden paddle, a basket of frozen daub, and pointed toward a wall that looks like it's actively trying to fall apart. So there you are, in your lumpy cloak and floppy hat, smearing mud onto timber like a depressed baker frosting a haunted cake. You're sent from house to house, stuffing gaps with slush, shivering through the gusts and trying to pretend your fingers aren't slowly turning into sausages of doom. A woman thanks you with a smile and hands you a tiny bread crust. You devour it like it's a gourmet gift from heaven. The crust is cold, the bread is dry, and yet delicious. Your standards are gone. At one house, you get invited in briefly to warm your hands. The interior is barely better than outside, dark, smoky and cramped, but the fire burns steady, and you soak in the warmth like a lizard on a rock. The family huddled there offers you a seat near the hearth. A toddler waddles over, stares at you, and immediately tries to climb your leg. You are now a jungle gym. When you leave, the father nods solemnly and says, "You're learning." It's the highest praise you've gotten since arriving. Lunch is served back at the common house, a thin stew that tastes like onion water with occasional pulses of mystery meat. It's hot. It's wet. You slurp it like it's life itself, which, let's be honest, it kind of is. Afternoon means more wandering. You're sent with a pair of teenagers, Elijah and Ruth, to the outer perimeter of the village, where small plots of fenced land peek out from the snow like failed science experiments. These are gardens, technically. Right now, they're just patches of frozen misery. Your job? Check the fences for wolf holes. Yes, that's a thing. Apparently wolves are known to sneak into settlements, especially in lean winters, sniffing around for food scraps, small livestock, or the occasional unsupervised child. You're now helping spot weaknesses in the fence line while Ruth recounts the story of a neighbour's goose being stolen whole in the night. Elijah adds that sometimes you can hear them howling, real close, just past the tree line. You think he's joking, then you hear it. A howl. Long, low, distant, but not that distant. They both freeze. You do too. Fox, Ruth says. Maybe. Maybe, Elijah echoes, not sounding convinced. You finish the check faster after that. Much faster. As the sun dips and shadows grow longer, you return with aching arms, snow up to your knees, and the creeping knowledge that this place, this rickety village in the middle of a frozen nowhere, works because every single person refuses to stop working. Every crack patched, every fence checked, every ox stall cleaned, every task a buffer between survival and that long cold silence outside. You no longer feel like a tourist in a costume. You feel like part of the skeleton crew clinging to life on a continent trying to kill you with wind. Dinner is more stew, always stew. This one has beans. You weep a little from joy. That night, as you settle back onto your straw mattress and pull your cloak tight over your shoulders, you hear the wind scraping past the shutters again. But this time, you don't flinch, because today, the wind didn't win. You're starting to develop calluses in weird places, not just on your hands, though those are a mess of raw skin and dry cracks, but on your hips, your knees, your sense of self. It's like your entire body is figuring out how to live in the 1700s one stiff joint at a time. This morning is slower. People move like cold molasses, not from laziness, but because it's just too cold to rush. The common house is full of foggy breath, quiet coughs, and the soft clatter of wooden bowls being stacked. Someone pours hot water over yesterday's coals to make a sad kind of tea. You get a half cup. It tastes like wet bark, but it's hot bark. So, win. Thomas catches your eye and gives you a nod. Not a smile. Don't get ahead of yourself. But it's the first nod he's given you that didn't feel like a reluctant obligation. This one says, "You're not entirely useless. a low bar. But hey, you're clearing it now. Today you're told you'll be helping with the making, that's all they say. You imagine tools, maybe carpentry, or possibly churning butter, which you'd honestly be into. Instead, you're dragged across the muddy path to the village workshop, a low, wide structure that smells like hot iron and splinters. Inside, you find out what the making means. Winter survival gear, village edition, tools, sled runners, food racks, buckets, whatever the community needs right now. It's part hardware store, part blacksmith's forge, part insane tinkerer's playground. And you've just been drafted onto the team. You're set to work next to a boy barely older than 12 who sharpens tools with a focus that's almost terrifying. He doesn't look up when you approach. He just hands you a pile of warped nails and gestures toward a corner where a man is hammering red-hot metal on an anvil like he's personally offended by it. Welcome to Colonial Ironwork 101. It's loud in here. Constant hammering. Sparks. People shouting to be heard over the ringing of metal. The fire in the forge is the hottest thing you've felt since arriving. Bright and hypnotic. The heat blasts your face, instantly drying the tips of your nostrils and making your cheeks sting. You're not forging anything yourself. No one is that foolish. But you do get handed a set of tongs and told to help the blacksmith keep the rhythm. This involves pulling metal out of the fire and laying it on the anvil just before the next hammer strike. The timing is nerve-wracking, and you nearly lose an eyebrow at least once. But it's also kind of thrilling. There's something ancient and satisfying about the whole thing. Fire, metal, tools. You're building the future, one nail or horseshoe or latch hook at a time. Across the room, someone is crafting snowshoes. Yes, snowshoes. Not the modern REI kind, but the old school, bent wood and rawhide kind. You move in closer during your break and watch. The frame is made from carefully steamed ashwood, bent into a teardrop shape and laced with gut or sinew. They're ugly. And perfect. You find out these aren't for sport, they're critical. If you need to haul firewood, hunt, or even just walk the half-mile to another farmstead, snowshoes might mean the difference between getting home and disappearing forever under a snowdrift. The guy making them lets you try on a finished pair. You stomp outside and immediately sink into the snow anyway because you haven't figured out how to walk without looking like a drunken moose. Everyone laughs, including you. By noon, your hands are filthy, your eyebrows feel singed, and your ears are ringing. You take lunch sitting on an overturned barrel with your new favourite snowshoe guy, whose name turns out to be Caleb. He offers you a strip of dried meat that tastes like leather dipped in salt. You accept without hesitation. "I heard you fell in from the future," Caleb says, completely deadpan. You freeze. "What?" He grins. "Just kidding. Mostly. You've got a strange way about you. The way you stare at things like you've never seen them, even dumb stuff, like nails. You chew your meat and try to look less suspicious." "It's all right," he adds, shrugging. "Everyone's strange here, just different flavours." After lunch, the workshop shifts gears. Someone's trying to mend a broken sled, and you're dragged in to help rebind the runners with heated pitch. The whole thing smells like burning tar and bad decisions. You're careful this time, no eyebrow loss. As you smear the goo onto the wood with a wooden spatula, you notice a wall of tools, each one handmade, each one worn by use. Axes, saws, clamps, knives. Most have initials carved into the handles. These aren't just tools, they're family heirlooms, inheritance, history. It dawns on you that every object here was made by someone, repaired by someone, preserved, not discarded. It's the opposite of your world, where a toaster dies and you just buy a new one. Here, even a splintered sled gets another chance. By late afternoon, you're helping stack finished goods. Baskets, tools, snowshoes, on labelled shelves. There's no money-changing hands. This is the community's inventory. If someone needs something, they come borrow it. Or trade. Or work off the debt. You ask Caleb what happens if someone doesn't return what they borrowed. "Then we have fewer tools," he says, shrugging, "and fewer friends." Simple math, brutal logic. Before sunset, you're asked to carry a basket of tools to the common house. On the way, you pass two kids dragging firewood on a sled. They wave, you wave back. One of them slips and lands face first in a snowbank, then jumps up laughing. You smile, not because it's funny, well okay it is, but because you feel something strange bubbling up. Familiarity. You're starting to recognize faces, patterns, chores, Sounds. That's Ruth with the quick hands. That's Elijah, always humming. That's Caleb, who smells like pitch and dried apple and sarcastic wisdom. You're not just watching the village anymore, you're inside it. Back at the common house, you set the tools down by the hearth, where someone's fixing a busted stool. You don't get a thank you, just a nod. That nod means you did something right. Dinner is beans stew again, this time with a wedge of dense cornmeal bread. You eat it all. You even lick the bowl. Nobody judges you. That night, before sleep, you stare up at the timber beams overhead. They creak in the wind. Everything creaks in the wind. But you've earned your place here today. You built it. You wake up coughing. Again. This time, it's not from smoke or someone snoring too close to your ear. It's from your own lungs, dry and sore and sending up a warning flare. Your throat feels like it's been scraped with a stick dipped in ash. Your joints ache. Your stomach turns when you sit up, and a wave of heat flashes under your skin before it's pulled away by the cold. You blink slowly and think, nope, that's not good. You're getting sick, which is very, very bad. Colonial America in winter is not a place you want to catch a chill or whatever this is. People don't really get colds here. They get fevers, agues, fluxes, and all manner of ominous, vaguely named afflictions, and you've heard the whispers over the past few days. Someone died last week, 2 settlements over. Sick in the blood, they said. Started with a cough. You wrap your cloak tighter and make your way to the hearth, hoping no one notices that your nose is redder than the devil's pyjamas. But of course Eliza notices. She squints at you with eyes that could cut glass. You look ghost bit, she says, which is apparently her way of saying you look like hot trash that got cold again. She grabs your wrist and presses her fingers to your pulse like she's counting something only she can hear. Then she tuts, which is universal for, oh no, this idiot's about to make my day harder. Go to the healer, she says flatly, before your lung seize up. You're not sure what the colonial healer will do, but it seems unwise to argue with someone who has, without words, already decided what hole she'll bury you in if you keel over mid-breakfast. The healer's place isn't exactly a doctor's office. It's more like a room attached to the back of the meeting house that smells aggressively of mint, boiled roots, and regret. You knock softly on the crooked wooden door and it opens before you even finish. The healer, a woman named Mercy, which feels a bit on the nose, looks you over like she's already halfway through your autopsy. She's in her 60s, with sharp eyes, rough hands, and a braid so thick it could be used as a rope ladder. You try to explain your symptoms, but she waves you to a stool and starts prodding your lymph nodes with the confidence of someone who's seen way worse. Any blood in the sputum? She asks. You blink. What? She nods like that's a yes. Out come the tools, none of which look even remotely medical. A wooden tongue depressor, a pewter spoon, a sack of dried herbs that smells like peppery dirt. She heats a bit of water over the hearth, drops in the herbs, and tells you to inhale the steam while she examines your fingernails for unbalanced humours. You want to laugh, you really do, but your lungs feel like they've been lined with burlap, and when you do let out a tiny cough, it rattles through your chest like an old barn in a windstorm. Mercy mixes up a paste of something that looks like mustard and vinegar, and slathers it onto a square of cloth. Then she slaps it directly onto your chest with all the tenderness of someone patching a broken fence. It burns, like really burns. Keep that on, she says. If you get the chills, drink the bark water by the hearth. You look toward the hearth. There's a clay cup already waiting, filled with a greyish liquid that smells like it used to be part of a tree and now regrets it. Do not vomit in my house, she warns. You promise. You lie. The rest of the day is a blur. You're sent back to the common house, where you're immediately assigned the sick corner. It's just the regular floor, but a little farther from the fire and slightly more pitiful. You're given a blanket that might have lice in it, and a tin mug of the infamous bark water. You sip it and instantly regret everything about your life choices. And that's when things get social. People start coming over. Quietly. Casually. Like you've turned into a side quest. Ruth drops off a small cloth-wrapped biscuit and mutters something about recovery bread, which you don't question. Elijah appears a while later with a carved stick and tells you it's a sick stick, used for scratching your back without taking off your shirt. Then he sits next to you and just talks about the cold, about a goat that keeps escaping, about how Mercy once told someone to tie garlic around their ankles to spook out the sickness. You half listen, half doze. It's kind of nice. You're used to suffering alone, in a very modern, isolated kind of way. But here, even being sick is communal. Around dusk, Mercy returns to check on you. She asks if your cough is worse. You say no. You cough immediately afterward. She sighs like you've just committed a personal betrayal. Rest or you'll rot from the lungs up, she says. Poetic, comforting. Someone hands you a small beeswax candle and tells you to keep it near your head while you sleep. Keeps away night damp, they explain. You wonder briefly if the real reason is to keep track of your breathing. You fall asleep to the sound of the fire snapping, someone humming softly, and your own breath wheezing like a broken bellows. And here's the thing, you're not getting better yet, but you're not getting worse either. Not right away. Maybe it's Mercy's terrifying paste. Maybe it's the bark water. Maybe it's just that 10 people brought you bits of food and warmth and weird advice all day long. Whatever it is, it's holding you together. That night you dream of floating down a river of honey and pine needles with tiny frogs singing lullabies from the banks. You'll probably wake up feeling like death again. But tonight, you're not alone. You wake to an itchy throat and the distinct sensation of being stared at. You crack open one eye and find yourself face to face with a goat. Inside, in the common house. It blinks at you, bleats softly, then waddles away like this is completely normal, which apparently it is. Your chest still feels tight, but you're not as feverish. Your cough has dulled into something less alarming, and you can sit up without your head spinning like a badly spun top. Mercy's paste has dried into something flaky and unpleasant, but you're too scared to peel it off. You suspect it might still be doing something, or maybe it's just a talisman of hope now. Eliza comes over with a bowl of hot something and sets it in your lap without a word. You inhale the steam. It smells earthy and brothy, like boiled root vegetables and a single noble carrot. You're halfway through before you realise she also brought you a wooden spoon shaped like a tiny shovel. Thoughtful. Then Thomas appears. He grunts. He points. And then he walks away. You follow. It takes a while to realise where you're going. It's still early, barely light out, and the wind has a bitter edge that says don't stay outside too long or your cheeks will fall off. You shuffle behind Thomas, your boots half frozen again, your cloak wrapped around you like it's the only thing standing between you and early death. The path he leads you down veers away from the village, out toward the woods, where the trees begin to lean in and the snow deepens with every step. You recognise none of this. You haven't been this far out before. You're not even sure this counts as village anymore. Eventually the trees break into a clearing, and there it is. A small plain wooden structure, steepled roof, cross above the door, a church. You're not surprised, you're just surprised it's not bigger. Church in Colonial America isn't like church where you're from. There are no cushioned pews, no stained glass, no cheery bulletin boards covered in construction paper cutouts. This place is bare, cold, utilitarian. The benches are rough-hewn planks. The pulpit looks like a crate turned sideways. There's no heat, no candles, just a single window letting in reluctant light. You sit down near the back and immediately regret it. The wood is brutally cold, and your butt is still recovering from days of snow hauling and sick cornering. People trickle in, stomping snow off their boots and shaking off cloaks. No one talks, no one smiles. The silence is reverent, but also a little tense, like everyone's waiting for something they're not sure they want. The preacher appears like a summoned ghost. He's thin, pale, and speaks like each word is carved from stone. No theatrics, no songs, just scripture and stern warnings, and one very long prayer that could double as a sleep aid if not for the way it keeps casually referencing fire and punishment. You sit, freezing, aching, coughing once, to your shame, and trying to stay upright as your legs fall asleep and your back complains. This isn't just spiritual, it's physical endurance. But then you start watching the people around you, the bowed heads, the still hands, the way their eyes close not with peace but with exhaustion. They're not here for salvation, not entirely. They're here for strength. Church in winter is part ritual, part social thermometer. Who's well enough to attend? Who didn't show up? Who's coughing too much? Who looks thinner than they did last week? It's not about belief right now. It's about survival. After the service, there's no mingling, no coffee hour. Just a slow exodus back through the trees, boots crunching through the snow, wind whistling above the branches. Thomas walks beside you silently. You cough once, and he hands you a bit of cloth to cover your mouth. Not kindly, just practically. Once back in the village, there's a noticeable lull. Sundays are half rest days, half reset days. Some people retreat inside to mend clothes or sit by the fire. Others haul water or chop wood in silence. Even the animals seem quieter, as if the whole settlement knows it has to conserve what little energy it has left for the week ahead. You're handed a Bible at some point. No one asks if you can read it. They just assume you can. You flip it open and find the pages stiff and yellowed, but full of familiar words. You pretend to read. You mostly think. The fire is smaller that night. Less fuel, the stew thinner, but no one complains. Mercy checks on you again and grumbles something about your colour returning. She hands you a thimble-sized piece of candied ginger to dry out the chest. You chew it carefully. It tastes like a Christmas punch trying to punch back. By the fire, Ruth starts to sing. Not loudly, just a few notes, soft and wavering, like a lullaby you're not supposed to hear. Others join in, slowly without looking at each other. It's not a hymn, just a song about winter passing, about waiting for thaw. You lie back on your straw mattress, still bundled, still sore, still breathing a little too heavily. But you made it through another day, church and all. And tonight, the wind outside doesn't sound like a threat. It sounds like a question you've learned not to answer. You're starting to develop a theory. Colonial America isn't trying to kill you directly. It's trying to wear you down, so you throw yourself into a snowbank and say, "Fine, I'm done." The weather isn't as cold this morning, but somehow that's worse. The snow's begun to melt just enough to turn into slush. Muddy, icy, soul-crushing slush that seeps into your shoes, no matter how tightly you try to lace them. Your cloak drags through it, the hem wet and gritty. You can hear it squelch with every step like someone chewing regret. Thomas greets you with another of his patented non-verbal gestures, this time pointing toward a trail you haven't seen before. You give him a look. He gives you a walking stick. "Going to market," he mutters. "Don't lag." You've never walked faster and been more miserable in your life. The path to the travelling winter market isn't a road so much as a half-frozen swamp stitched between trees. You slip multiple times and very nearly eat historical dirt. The others in your group, mostly older boys and 2 women, one carrying a massive woven basket like it's filled with bricks, move with slow, practiced care. Every footstep is deliberate, every slide corrected before it becomes a tumble. You wonder how far this market is. Nobody says. Maybe they're trying to surprise you. Maybe they think you know. Maybe they think you'll die halfway there and be eaten by wolves. Either way, after what feels like an hour of walking through a frozen marshland cursed by some kind of Puritan poltergeist, you start to hear voices, then bells, and then, just as your ankles begin to scream, you come over a low ridge and see it. A market, in the snow. It's not huge. More like a scattered camp of wagons and wooden stalls set up along a clearing, ringed by fire pits and melting snowbanks. But it's alive. People from other villages, wrapped in every available layer of fabric, mill about slowly, some on foot, some arriving on sleds drawn by horses or oxen. The smell hits you first. Roasted chestnuts, wet fur, firewood, and something sharp and metallic, like someone's boiling pennies nearby. It's not festive. Don't get that idea. This isn't a cheery, buy a trinket and drink cider event. This is commerce for survival. Every face looks pinched. Every hand is calloused. Every trade is tense. And yet, it's still kind of magical. You follow your group into the cluster, where stalls are made from wagon beds and stretched cloth. Items are laid out in neat piles on crates, salted meat wrapped in cloth, slabs of lard, smoked fish strung like necklaces, candles, thread, worn tools, nails, hand-knit socks, even a stack of wax-sealed letters that look older than some trees. Money doesn't change hands, not really. It's all barter. You watch as a man trades 2 chickens for a jar of bear grease. A woman offers a wool scarf and a copper pin for half a wheel of cheese. A boy hands over a clutch of feathers and walks away with a small, badly bent metal spoon and a grin like he just won the lottery. Thomas gives you a job. Help guard the goods. You stand near your village's tiny stall, which is really just a patch of cleared ground with a threadbare blanket laid out, and a pile of things for trade. Hand-carved pegs, bundles of herbs, some wool yarn, and what might be soap if you squint and believe. People stop by, they haggle, they squint at you. Some speak in a thick Dutch or German accent you don't catch a word of. One woman eyes your mittens and mutters, "Too fine for these hands. They're city-made." You don't know whether to be insulted or flattered. Eventually Thomas returns with a tin lantern, 3 rough candles, and something wrapped in waxed linen. He's traded away almost everything from your stall to get them. He holds the wrapped bundle like it's sacred, then tucks it inside his coat. Later, you find out it was sugar. Quirky detail? In the dead of winter, people sometimes used frozen meat as currency, literally trading a chunk of frozen venison like a bar of gold. Just don't drop it. And the scholarly debate? Some argue that these markets were the early seeds of capitalism in the colonies, allowing for freer exchange outside state-controlled trade systems. Others push back, saying they were too irregular, too local, and too driven by survival needs to count as economic innovation. Either way, you just watched a man trade a chicken for a goat skull with a candle in it, so. You wander after your shift, past stalls hawking bone buttons and hand-wrapped quills. There's a booth where a man's selling teeth. Yes, teeth, strung on wire. He claims they're for medicine. You don't ask. There's music now, faint and oddly timed. A fiddle, badly tuned, and a flute made from a gourd. Not quite a party, but not bleak either. There's something about it that's human. You watch 2 girls dance, shivering in their boots, wrapped in scarves. A woman sells hot cider from a blackened kettle over a fire. You trade a wooden button for a ladleful. It burns your tongue, but feels like heaven anyway. You meet a trapper from the north who offers you a knife in exchange for your wool mittens. You decline, barely. The mittens are itchy, sure, but they're the only reason you still have fingers. Later, on the walk back, everyone's quieter. The trail is darker, wetter. You carry some of the traded goods in a sack over your shoulder. Candles, a little sack of flour, a tin spoon with a dent that looks suspiciously like it's been used for skull-related activities. It's hard not to reflect on the contrast. Your world is one of abundance and choice. Grocery stores, overnight shipping, an entire aisle for just flavours of soda. Here, a tin of salt could make someone's week. A candle could mean the difference between reading at night and sitting in the dark. The people here don't want luxuries. They want enough. Just enough to keep going. Just enough to keep warm. Just enough to see spring. You reach the village well after dusk. The fire is still going. You add wood to it yourself this time, no one asking. Dinner is warm barley and a few slices of hard cheese, traded today, carefully portioned. It's a quiet meal, not somber, just efficient, content. Before bed, Ruth offers you a corner of her blanket to sit on. Not to share the blanket, just the edge. But still, it's a gesture. You lie down on your usual spot near the hearth, the warmth licking at your feet, and you feel something strange. Satisfied. The wind has changed. You notice it right away. Not just the direction, but the quality. It no longer screams like it's angry at your existence. Now it moans, long and low, like it's remembering something sad. There's weight to it. The kind of weight that suggests something is building just past the horizon. You don't need a degree in meteorology or colonial divination rituals to know a storm is coming. And yet, the village is quieter today. No hammering, no frantic hauling of firewood. The energy feels trapped. You're assigned to help with the children, which sounds innocent until you realise what that actually means. Babysitting 5 grumpy colonial tweens in a one-room house full of sharp objects, open flames, and 0 insulation. Good luck. Ruth greets you with a smirk when you arrive. They've been in here 3 days already, she says, folding her arms. It's like trying to cook soup with frogs. Inside, the cabin is both too warm and not warm enough. The hearth blazes on one side, but the draft from the floorboards is like someone left a trapdoor to the Arctic cracked open. A pot of something vaguely edible simmers, but no one's paying attention to it. The kids are scattered like bored raccoons, one picking at a scab with theatrical flair, another scraping a stick with a knife that's definitely not allowed, and 2 more arguing over a game that seems to involve pebbles, groaning, and spite. There's also a baby, just on the floor, staring at the ceiling like it's processing a deep personal betrayal. You sit down on a bench near the fire and immediately get hit in the forehead with a pine cone. No warning, no apology. The game has begun. Here's the reality. Colonial winter wasn't just a physical test. It was a mental one. Cabin fever was more than just a cute phrase. People went stir-crazy, kids especially, trapped indoors for weeks on end with little stimulation beyond chores, arguments, and the occasional rat encounter. It wasn't unusual for children to snap into strange, unpredictable moods. You're witnessing that firsthand. You try to organise something. A story, maybe? A game? But the kids smell desperation and turn on you with the efficiency of a small militia. The eldest, her name might be Sarah, or Satan, folds her arms and stares you down. "Tell us something we don't know," she demands. You blink. "About what?" "Anything, or we'll feed you to the goat." You glance outside. The goat is staring directly at the window like it knows what's coming. So, you talk. You make something up. A tale about a bird that could mimic any sound, even the wind. You add in a snow spirit, a lost mitten that turns into a wolf, and, why not, a talking kettle. You expect to be booed off your wooden stage. Instead, they stare, not bored, not skeptical, just quiet. Then, slowly, Sarah nods. "Fine," she says. "You can stay." High praise. By midday, the kids have accepted you, which means they've started insulting you less and asking for help with deeply chaotic projects more frequently. "Can you hold this?" turns into you holding a small spinning wheel that's missing half its parts. "Can you tie this?" becomes tying a rope around a doll made of bundled twigs and someone's sock. "Can you show me a trick?" leads to you awkwardly teaching them how to fold paper, which results in a dozen wrinkled triangles and one child very convinced he's invented weaponized origami. There's also the musket incident. No, seriously. At one point you hear a strange clunk from the corner of the cabin and turn to find one of the older boys, Jacob, of course it's Jacob, holding what is definitely a musket, aimed at the ceiling with an expression of both pride and mild confusion. You do not panic, you do not scream, you just walk over slowly, take the musket and say the words every colonial babysitter has probably uttered at some point. "No playing with a family gun indoors." You set it back on the rack high above the hearth where it belongs and give Jacob a stern look. He shrugs. "Wasn't loaded." You're not comforted. The sky grows darker earlier than usual. You glance out the window and realise that snow has started falling again. Hard this time. It's piling on the windowsill, blurring the trees into vague smudges. The wind is picking up again, no longer just cold but angry. The moaning you heard this morning has turned into something closer to a growl. The storm has arrived. Ruth comes back just before dark. Her cheeks are red, hair crusted with snow. "Time to get back," she says, looking at you, "before we get stuck." You want to tell her you're already stuck, emotionally, spiritually, maybe physically, but you just nod and gather your cloak. The kids shout their goodbyes. One throws a pine cone at you again, but it feels affectionate this time. You trudge back through deepening snow, the path nearly gone. The trees look taller in the dusk. The wind stings your face like it's trying to erase your features. By the time you get back to the common house, you're soaked to the knees and exhausted. Everyone's huddled close to the fire. Mercy hands you a cup of something herbal that smells like sadness and twigs. "Still coughing?" she asks. You nod. She hands you 2 pine cones and tells you to sleep with them under your mattress to trap the phlegm. You do not ask for clarification. Dinner is small tonight. Just broth and a hunk of bread. Everyone eats slowly, listening to the wind. The fire is high. You're grateful for it in a way you've never been grateful for anything before. As you lie down that night, wrapped in your cloak and someone else's borrowed blanket, you think of the kids, the goat, the musket, and the wind. You survived your first full indoor day. Tomorrow? That's tomorrow's problem. You've been asleep for what feels like 10 minutes when a hand shakes your shoulder. Not roughly, just enough to snap you out of a dream where you were warm and everything smelled like French fries, which probably means you're slipping into delusion. It's Thomas. Of course it is. He kneels beside you, wrapped in a thick cloak, his breath fogging in the cold air that's crept back into the common house now that the fire's burned down. His voice is low and blunt. "Come, your turn." You stare at him, bleary and slightly offended. "My turn for what?" He says it like it's obvious. "Night watch." You sit up, brain still half in dreamland. "You mean, like, outside?" He nods, already standing, already moving toward the door. You whisper a few heartfelt curses into your blanket, then get up. It's your turn to guard the village. The wind hits you immediately, slicing through your wool layers with the intimacy of a slap. The snow has piled high. up past your ankles, heavy and sticky. The moon is somewhere behind the clouds, giving everything that ghostly blue glow, like the world's been dipped in cold milk. Thomas hands you a lantern and a musket. Yes, an actual, honest-to-history musket. It's nearly as long as your entire body and heavier than you expected. He offers no instructions, just a simple, grim, don't drop it, don't aim it at your feet. He points out the patrol path, just a slow loop around the village perimeter, following the fence line, passing the well, the livestock pens and the little watch platform near the eastern edge. You're to do 2 loops. 2. That's it. You're hoping for an hour tops, but colonial time, like colonial laundry, stretches forever. Here's the thing about colonial night watch. It's not ceremonial. It's not about feeling important or playing soldier. It's about fear. Very real, very justified fear. Animals, bandits, enemy raiders, the cold itself. 1,000 threats circling just outside the firelight. Most nights are quiet, but most isn't all, and it only takes once, so someone always watches. Tonight, that someone is you. You trudge forward, lantern held high, musket bouncing awkwardly on your shoulder. Your breath curls around your face. The snow squeaks beneath your feet, soft, compressed, cold enough that it almost sounds like it's complaining. The first few minutes are tolerable. The adrenaline helps. You feel alert, useful, alive in the way you only feel when your body's actively trying not to freeze. Then your brain starts to wander. You imagine all the things lurking just out of sight. A wolf, a bear, a person, something worse. You force your eyes forward, past the fence, past the dark trees. The night hums around you, full of creaks and cracks and small hidden rustles, the kind of sounds that make you feel watched. Then you round the first corner and almost fall into the well. It looms up suddenly on your left, half buried in snow, its bucket frozen in place. You shine your lantern down into the dark shaft just to reassure yourself that it's, a well, not a horror pit. You try to keep your pace steady after that. It doesn't help that the lantern's flame flickers whenever you move too fast, or that the musket feels less like protection and more like a decorative log. You have no idea how to fire it. You're not even sure it's loaded. Then comes the sound, not loud, not close, but very, very wrong. It starts as a slow crunch, not yours, something else, something heavy. You freeze, turn slowly and hold the lantern up. The flame sputters in the wind. The snow nearby glows orange, but the trees beyond remain black and unknowable. You hear it again. A step, then another. It's not a deer. You'd hear a rustle, the telltale crack of hooves on brush. This is more deliberate, slower, like whatever it is knows exactly where it's going. You grip the musket tighter, even though you're pretty sure if you pulled the trigger it would backfire and remove your eyebrows. Another step and then silence. You hold your breath. Nothing. No wind, no trees moving, no sound at all. Then a bird shrieks high overhead and you nearly wet yourself. You make the rest of your rounds faster. Not exactly running, but not far off. By the time you reach the tiny watch platform, you're out of breath and extremely motivated to never do this again. The platform is just a raised wooden structure with a crude roof and walls made of uneven logs. There's a bench, a lantern hook, a little barrel that might be for storing something. It smells weird. You choose not to investigate. You climb up and sit down, musket across your lap, lantern hung above. From here the whole village is visible, or at least the dark humps of roofs poking out of the snow. You sit, you listen, and slowly, very slowly, you start to hear more than just fear. You hear the wind dragging itself through the trees. You hear a horse snort in its stall. You hear wood creaking under snow weight. And eventually you realize you're not afraid anymore. Not entirely. Because this is part of it. This is what they all do. You're not being punished. You're being included. Your second loop is quieter, less terrifying. Still miserable, sure, but you're almost proud. And when you return to the common house, Thomas is waiting by the door. You hand him the musket with frozen fingers. He takes it without a word. You start to head toward your straw mat, but then he stops you. Steady, he says, not quite looking at you. A compliment. A real one. You lie down, still wearing most of your cloak and boots because unlacing them now feels like surgery. You stare at the ceiling beams. And for the first time since you got here, you feel safe, because someone else is watching now. You dream of wolves, not snarling or snapping, nothing bloody or cinematic, just eyes, dozens of them glittering in the trees, watching, waiting. You dream of how quiet their paws are in the snow, how they breathe in steam and vanish before the sound reaches your ears. You wake to the familiar scent of smoke and the slightly less pleasant aroma of feet. A few folks are already up, shifting silently, retucking themselves under cloaks or heading toward the fire to rekindle its orange glow. You lie there for a minute longer, mind full of those dream wolves. They were too vivid, too close. Your brain can't tell if it was just your imagination or if your subconscious is trying to tell you to look out the window right now. So you do. You rise slowly, feet stiff from last night's patrol, and peek between the wooden shutters. The world outside is still dark, early, windless. Fresh snow blankets the ground, crisp and unspoiled except for a trail of delicate paw prints leading toward the woods. You blink. Not dog prints, not deer. Too big. Too many. You grab your cloak. You don't even have to ask around. The moment you step outside, others are already talking about it. A group of men stands near the edge of the livestock pens, lanterns casting soft glows onto the white ground. You approach just in time to hear one of them say, "Took 2 chickens, no blood, just feathers." That earns a long silence. It's not the chickens. Chickens are practically built to be lost in winter. It's the fact that whatever took them did it clean. No mess, no struggle, no barking dog. That's worse. You follow the tracks out toward the edge of the village. They curve into the woods, disappearing under low branches heavy with snow. One of the men whistles softly through his teeth and mutters, "Wolves again?" Another man, older, squints at the trees like they insulted his mother. "Maybe," he says. "Maybe not." That's when the stories start. By mid-morning, everyone's got a version. Old Mary says it's a spirit beast, a snow devil, that lives in the dark pine woods and only comes down when it smells fear. Jacob, of musket-grabbing fame, claims he saw it once. Says it had eyes like a dying fire and walked like a man but wasn't one. Mercy, ever the skeptic, just rolls her eyes. It's winter. Things are hungry. That's the whole story. But no one's entirely convinced. Because it's not just the chickens, it's the feeling. Even when you're inside by the fire, surrounded by people, you can't shake it. The sense that you're not alone out there. That something waits just beyond the trees, watching, learning. Midday, you're sent out with a small group to help reinforce the outer fencing and check for any gaps in the palisade. You hike through thigh-deep snow, hammering wooden stakes into frozen dirt with numb fingers. It's cold enough that your breath crystallizes on your scarf and your cheeks go stiff halfway through a sentence. Elijah walks beside you, holding a long staff he claims he uses to poke spirits. You don't ask if he's serious. You don't want to know. He gestures toward the woods with his chin. My grandfather used to say that the woods could remember. Not just paths and people, but feelings. Like if something terrible happened there, the trees would know, and they'd whisper it back to anything that listened. You stare at him. Cheerful, you say. He grins. We're a very optimistic people. As you finish the last section of fence, you hear it. A long, low howl. Not close, not far, just there. Everyone freezes. No one speaks. A second howl answers from farther away, then silence. Elijah mutters something under his breath and touches the iron tip of his staff. One of the older women spits into the snow and murmurs a prayer. You all head back early. No one says why. That night everyone stays inside. The doors are bolted, shutters are closed tight. The fire burns higher than usual, fed with good wood, not scraps. No one wants to admit it, but you can feel the village drawing inward, like an animal curling into itself. After dinner, someone starts telling stories. Not bedtime stories, warning stories. Cautionary tales passed down like oral bug spray. One's about a traveller who tried to cross the woods alone in January and was found in spring, frozen to a tree with no eyes. Another tells of a creature made of frost and bark that mimics human voices, calling out for help until someone follows the sound off the path. You try to laugh, you really do. But outside the wind is rising again, and it sounds different, not random, not chaotic. It sounds like breath. You curl up by the fire, cloak pulled tight, your sick blanket repurposed as a kind of mental security system. Thomas gives you a look from across the room. Not concerned, just checking. You nod once. He nods back. It's not wolves, maybe. Or maybe it is. But something is out there. And it knows where you live. You're sent into the woods the next day. Of course you are. You'd think, after a night of people swapping stories about frost demons, hollow-eyed travellers, and screaming bark beasts, someone would say, hey, maybe we shouldn't send the new guy, who still doesn't know how to reload a musket, into the frozen abyss with a bag of jerky and a snowshoe learning curve. But no, apparently today's the day you become useful in the woods. Ruth and Elijah meet you at the edge of the village. Each of them is wearing a full set of snowshoes, those beautiful hand-laced contraptions you watched being built in the workshop days ago. Yours are a loner pair that smell faintly like pickled deer hide and desperation. They're laced onto your feet with straps that look like they've seen some things and would rather not talk about it. You are, to be clear, not confident. But Ruth tosses you a crude walking stick, mutters, "Stay behind me," and heads into the woods like she owns the trees. You follow, because the alternative is staying behind and explaining why you're scared of fairy tale monsters. The snow out here is deep. Not the decorative snow of the village paths. This is uncharted snow, white, pristine, and very likely harbouring ankle traps and passive-aggressive pine cones. Every step with the snowshoes feels like stomping through mashed potatoes while wearing tennis rackets. Ruth moves like she's skating. Elijah hums a tune that doesn't sound like it has a key. You move like a baby moose on stilts. After a while, you stop apologising for it. You just trudge. You're not hunting exactly. Not like with guns or traps. You're scouting, which as it turns out means wandering through the woods with your eyes peeled for animal sign, broken branches, scat tracks, and any place that might be good for future snares. This is fine. You're bundled. You're layered. You've learned to walk without stabbing your own ankles. But the quiet starts to get to you. Out here, the silence isn't peaceful. It's intentional. Like the forest is holding its breath. Even your companions speak little. Ruth gives short, clipped instructions. Deer scraped here. Coyote took something there. Don't step in that. Elijah occasionally says helpful things like, "This is where my cousin saw a ghost once." He grins when you glare at him. Or a drunk bear. You don't relax. Around midday, you stop to eat. The jerky is a salt brick. The dried apple is chewy in a way that makes you suspicious of its original appleness. The snow is clean enough to melt in your mouth, so you do. It's basically artisanal hydration. Ruth takes out a bundle of cloth and unwraps a small piece of smoked meat and what looks like a biscuit made of crushed oats and stubbornness. She eats without speaking. Elijah carves spirals into the snow with a stick and hums again. And then you hear it. A snap. Not a twig snap, a branch snap. Close. Too close. Ruth's head jerks up. Elijah stops humming. The three of you freeze, still as the trees around you. Then another sound. Movement. Heavy, but careful. You don't see anything, but you feel it. Ruth slowly reaches for the hatchet at her belt. Elijah grips his staff. You, holding your walking stick like it might suddenly become magical, just try not to breathe too loud. A few long, dragging footsteps. Then silence. Ruth signals. It means back quiet. Now. No arguments. You move carefully, deliberately, your feet sinking silently into the snow with each step. Every shadow feels like it's watching you. Every branch creak sounds like a whisper. You don't talk again until you're well past the thicket and back on familiar ground. Ruth finally lets out a breath. Could have been a bear, she mutters. Could have been something else. What kind of something else, you ask, because you hate yourself. She just shrugs. Didn't want to find out. That's not comforting. Elijah, of course, says, "It's probably just the pine devil." You give him a long, withering look. He shrugs. Kidding. Pause. Mostly. As you near the village, the tension finally starts to melt off. You can see the palisade through the trees now, the smoke rising from chimneys. Even the snow seems less heavy here, like the land knows it's being watched over. Back inside the gates, Thomas raises an eyebrow at your snow-soaked boots and flushed face. Ruth walks past him without a word. Elijah offers a little bow, staff swinging dramatically. "Scouting went well," he says. "Nobody died. That's a good day." You trudge toward the common house, muscles aching, mind racing. Was it just an animal? Or was it one of the things the old stories whisper about? You'll never know. You're not sure you want to. That night, the fire feels warmer than usual. The food tastes better. Even the crusty bread feels like a gift. Someone shares a small square of honeycomb, and the room goes quiet while everyone takes a bite. You lie down near the hearth again, cloak pulled over your shoulders, your snowshoe-sore legs finally still. And just before sleep takes you, you think again of those woods. The quiet, the feeling of being watched, and the very real possibility that the thing out there watched you back. You wake to the sound of men shouting, not panic shouting, just the sort of gruff colonial bark that could mean anything from a tree fell on someone to someone misplaced a very important spoon. You sit up fast, cloak tangled around your legs, and immediately regret it as your back reminds you of yesterday's snowshoe sprint through what you now refer to as the creepy woods of no thanks. Ruth is already up, slipping on her boots with that terrifying efficiency that suggests she could be ready for battle or a pie bake-off in under 3 minutes. Trappers, she mutters, not even glancing at you. From up north? You blink. Trappers? Fur traders, she says, and then she's gone. You scramble after her, following the wave of villagers heading toward the main path. The morning air bites hard today, dry and sharp, with wind that seems to blow sideways just to keep you humble. The snow crunches underfoot, crusted over from last night's brief freeze. It's that kind of deceptive snow that looks soft until you fall directly through it and lose a boot. But there, at the far edge of the village, just outside the palisade gate, is a sight that actually stops you in your tracks. 3 men and a sled dog team. A real dog team. The dogs are lean and scrappy, coated in clumped fur and layers of dried snow, their tongues hanging out as they pant steam into the cold air. They're hitched to a rough wooden sled loaded with gear and bundles that are clearly not groceries. Furs, lots of them, piled high, smelling like something halfway between damp forest and animal that no longer has rights. The men, even rougher than the dogs. They're wrapped in mismatched layers. Fur, wool, leather, bone buttons. Their boots are stitched hide, not store-bought shoes. One wears a coat made from what you're pretty sure is bear skin, complete with the claws still attached and hanging like some sort of intimidation necklace. Another has a feather tucked into his fur hat, and a scar across his lip that looks self-inflicted or, worse, ceremonial. You think, these guys have seen things. The tallest one steps forward and gives a half nod to Thomas, who stands at the gate like he was carved from pine just for this moment. "We've got trade," the trapper says, voice low, cracked like old parchment. Thomas doesn't smile, just tilts his head toward the market square. The trappers pull the sled in, and just like that, everyone starts moving again. But now with purpose. Because trappers don't just bring goods, they bring news. You drift close enough to smell them. Wood smoke, blood, pine sap, and something faintly coppery. The kind of smell that says, "Don't ask what we had for breakfast." Their sled is unpacked quickly. Furs first, beaver, otter, fox, rabbit. Something with paws way too big to be reassuring. Then come the goods. Knives, bone tools, flint, powder horns, beads, tallow candles, and a pouch of what looks like dried berries but could honestly be anything from bear food to folk medicine. They set up at the edge of the market square, which right now is just a frozen circle of footprints and breath clouds. Thomas starts the bartering while the rest of the village trickles in to spectate. You get closer, you hear more, and what you hear isn't great. The trappers came from farther north beyond even the last known settlements. They don't name the place. "Wasn't there long enough," one of them mutters. They say it was already abandoned when they arrived. Cabins full of snowdrift and silence. Tools left mid-use. Fires gone cold. No bodies. Just gone. They talk about strange tracks. Not animal, not human. Something that walked on 2 legs but didn't leave a clear trail. Like it floated. Or dragged. One of the trappers, the one with the scar, adds, "No birds there. Just wind. Not even a crow." That sends a ripple through the crowd. Everyone knows. If there are no birds, something's wrong. Mercy listens, arms folded, eyes narrowed. "Could have been a fever," she says. "Could have," the tall trapper agrees. "But we didn't get close enough to catch it." They left in the middle of the night, they say. Heard something pacing outside the cabin. Heard breathing. Low. Wet. They didn't look. They didn't go back. After the stories and the bartering, the trappers rest. They don't ask for beds. They just sit by the fire near the blacksmith's shop, sipping something that smells sharp. Not alcohol exactly, but definitely flammable. Elijah, of course, ends up talking to them. You find him leaning in close, eyes wide, asking the kind of questions only someone who wants to be cursed would ask. Did you see anything? Did the snow move? What did it feel like? The trapper with the feather says, felt like we weren't supposed to be there. You don't like that answer. You back away. That night things are quiet, too quiet. No one sings, no one tells stories. Even the goat looks like it's got a bad feeling. Dinner is salted meat and turnip stew. The kind of meal that doesn't taste like much but fills the hole. You sit close to the fire, watching the trappers huddle in their coats just outside the ring of houses. They don't come inside, they don't ask, they know they don't belong. They're ghosts passing through. You wonder if they'll still be there in the morning. You wonder if you will. You lie down on your mat, cloak pulled to your chin, ears tuned to every creak of the wind. You hear a dog bark once, then silence, then something, just for a second, that might have been footsteps in the snow. Not close, but not far enough either. Morning creeps in behind heavy clouds, the kind that smother the sun and make time feel like a suggestion. There's no golden glow, no chirping birds, just a pale grey light, the crunch of someone's boots outside and the faint, miserable sound of someone coughing in the corner. You lift your head from your makeshift pillow, muscles tight from the cold and the tension that never really leaves anymore. The trappers are gone, no fanfare, no goodbyes, just an empty patch near the smithy where their fire burned, a few scattered bones left from whatever they ate last night, and sled tracks already half covered in snow. They came, they traded, they warned, and then they vanished. You sip your morning broth in silence, your breath steaming into the tin cup as the fire pops lazily behind you. Around the common house, people are quieter than usual, more heads bowed, fewer jokes. Even Elijah's usual morning humming has been replaced with the sound of him sharpening something. You don't ask what. The air feels different today, heavier. And then it happens. Someone flirts with you. Now, to be clear, you didn't think romance was going to be a part of this colonial experience. You've spent most of your time either freezing, failing at chores, coughing up your lungs, or dodging wolves real and imaginary. Love hasn't exactly been top of the list. But then there's Susanna. She's a few years older than you. Or maybe she just looks older from the bone-deep weariness that comes from a lifetime of surviving New England winters. She's got a sharp face, a sharper tongue, and somehow always smells like soap and wood smoke. You've barely spoken before now, beyond the occasional exchange glance or when she corrected your completely wrong attempt to identify a turnip. But this morning, you step outside to help haul water, and there she is, arms crossed, grinning at you like she knows something you don't. You still breathing? She asks. You nod. Most of the time. She tosses something at you. You catch it. Barely. A mitten. Thick. Wool. Hand knit. The thumb's crooked, and one of the seams is fraying. My smallest pair, she says. Figured you'd need them. You look like someone cursed your hands. You stare at the mitten, then back at her. This is a gift? She shrugs, but you catch the flicker of a smile she's trying to suppress. Could be. Could also be a challenge. You slip the mitten on. It's warm, ugly, perfect. Here's a thing no one tells you. Flirting in Colonial America is extremely practical. You don't get flowers and love notes. You get bread, firewood, hand-sewn clothing, a carved spoon if you're lucky. Romance isn't expressed in poetry. It's in helping patch someone's roof before a snowstorm hits. The wordless love language of you might die soon, so let me help you not die quite so fast. Susanna walks with you to the well. You ask how long she's lived here. Since I could walk, she says. Don't know any other place. She asks where you came from. You pause, then say, far, really far. She nods like that makes perfect sense. I figured, she says. You look like you're always surprised. Rude. Not inaccurate. Back at the common house, you help her mend a firewood sling, basically a heavy cloth loop used to haul logs. The rope is fraying, and your attempt to retie it is gently, efficiently redone by Susanna's much more capable hands. Do they teach knots where you're from? She asks, teasing. Only the emotional kind, you mutter. She laughs, low and warm, and something in your ribcage stirs that hasn't moved in weeks. That afternoon, you and Susanna haul wood together. The sled creaks under the weight, and your mittens, her mittens, are slowly becoming saturated with snow. Still, your hands are warmer than they've ever been. As you reach the storage shed, she pauses and looks at you. I heard you helped on night watch, she says. That true? You nod. A few nights ago. You scared? You pause. Yeah, a little. She considers that. Good. The ones who aren't scared do stupid things. Then she hands you the rope to the sled and adds, You'll make it here, I think. It hits you harder than you expect. You'll make it here? You don't say anything, just smile, the kind that hurts your cold cheeks a little. That night at the fire, she sits nearby. Not next to you, but not far. You share a cup of cider, thin and spiced. Someone plays a tune on a flute made from hollowed bone. It sounds like winter holding its breath. You watch her laugh at something Elijah says. Watch the way she presses her hands around her cup, thumbs brushing the rim. You don't think about the stories, or the wolves, or the trappers. Just for a minute, it's not about survival, it's about being here, together. Later, as you tuck into your straw mat and pull the blanket tight, you realise something strange. You're warm, not just physically, but in that part of you that forgot what connection feels like. Maybe it's the mitten, maybe it's the cider, maybe it's just knowing that in this frozen, brutal, stubborn little village, someone decided you were worth a pair of crooked, handmade wool mittens. And in a place like this, that's practically a love letter. The wind shifts again. You can feel it the moment you step outside in the morning. Colder, but not sharper. Not that bite-you-in-the-face cold you've gotten used to. This cold sinks, settles. It presses down on the village like a heavy blanket, quieting everything. No birds, no rustling trees. Even the snow seems to have stopped mid-air, just hanging in the sky, waiting. You know the look on people's faces before anyone says a word. That tightness around the mouth. That head-down posture. That slowness in the walk that has nothing to do with ice and everything to do with dread. It's started. The starving time. It's not like anyone stands up in the common house and says, "Hey folks, we're out of food." No dramatic announcement. Just smaller bowls, more broth, less anything in it. People chewing slower, spices gone, bread thinner. That last onion everyone's been staring at, still hanging from a hook like a condemned prisoner. You notice it first in the portions. Breakfast is a slop of cornmeal, but thinner than usual, watery and grey. You sip it like soup. No butter, of course, no honey, just heat and starch. Thomas eats in silence. Eliza gives you the last scrape from the pot without meeting your eyes. There's tension in the air, not panic, not yet, but hunger makes people quiet. Even the kids aren't throwing pine cones today. After breakfast, you're sent to the storehouse. You've never been in it before, just seen it from afar. A squat building made from rough logs, built low to trap heat, with a door so thick it looks like it's hiding treasure. Inside, not treasure. Shelves line the walls, most are empty. A few still hold barrels, sacks and jars, but they're opened already, half gone. You see dried beans, some flour in a cracked crock, one lonely jar of pickled vegetables. A man named Silas, the quartermaster of sorts, sits in the corner with a slate and a face like burnt toast. He calls your name and asks if you've ever counted potatoes. You say, "How many?" He says, "Exactly." You sit for 2 hours tallying what's left. A few shriveled carrots, a small mound of dried apple slices, a single knotted string of smoked fish that looks older than you are. There's a bag of salt, guarded like it's made of diamonds. Every time someone opens it, they mutter a prayer. You've never thought of food as numbers before, now it's math. Cold, cruel math. 32 mouths, 17 days until the next supply run. Maybe, weather permitting, if they don't get snowed in, if the other town isn't out themselves, you do the numbers in your head. They don't work. Lunch doesn't happen, not officially. Just a handful of people snacking from pockets, crusts, dried fruit, a piece of salted pork no bigger than your thumb. You share a small chunk of root vegetable with Susanna, who doesn't talk much today, just chews, stares. She finally says, "We're lucky we've got meat still." Then she adds, "Some places already ate the dogs." You blink. "We don't have dogs. We don't now." And then she just walks off. You're not sure if she's joking, and you're not sure you want to know. That afternoon you join a crew trying to dig through the snow to find buried parsnips from last fall. Apparently they planted extra and left them underground, hoping to dig them up later, frost and all. It's harder than it sounds. The ground is frozen solid, and the snow is packed to your knees. Your hands go numb, your nose runs. Elijah nearly breaks his shovel trying to pry a half-frozen tuber from the dirt. You do find a few, not many. They're gnarly, frost-burned and bitter. Still, Everyone treats them like treasure. They're taken back to the kitchen with something close to reverence. By sundown, the tension has hardened into something else. Resignation. Dinner is weak stew made from those half-frozen parsnips, a scrap of jerky, and broth from a bone that's been reused 3 times already. It smells like survival. It tastes like hope and mud. You eat it slowly. Susanna sits beside you again, saying nothing. You feel her arm brush yours for just a moment, then pull away. You notice someone across the room counting spoonfuls. Literally, counting. The fire burns higher tonight, people crowded closer. You hear a quiet argument between 2 women about whether to open the last jar of dried cherries. One says it's for when someone dies. The other says that's exactly why they should use it before someone does. The jar stays sealed. Before bed, someone quietly hands you a flat cake made from acorn meal and lard. It's heavy, dry, tastes like oily dirt. You eat the whole thing. Later, lying on your mat, you try not to think about your stomach. It growls anyway. You curl tighter, tucking your hands into your armpits for warmth. In the dark, someone whispers a prayer. Not for warmth, not for spring, just for one more day. You don't recognize the words, but you mouth them anyway. You wake up sweating, which is weird because it's still below freezing and your mat is as lumpy as ever, but here you are, drenched, shirt stuck to your back, hair damp, heart thudding like you ran a mile in your sleep. Someone stirred the fire too hot last night, or maybe you've got a fever again. You sit up, groggy and disoriented, pulling off your outer layer. The air bites at your skin immediately, steam rising off your body like you're some kind of sad, sick dumpling. Mercy notices. Of course she does. Too warm, she says, eyeing you suspiciously like you might spontaneously combust. I think I'm okay, you croak. Dangerous words, she replies, then gestures for you to follow her. Come on, you're going for a walk. You blink. A walk? In the woods. Isn't that where all the terrifying, unseen threats live? She shrugs. You'll be with me. Not comforting. You follow her through the snow. The sky's the same colour as the ground today. Grey, white, and all the shades of, let's see what breaks you first. The wind has died down, but the silence is louder. Trees creak softly under their snow load, and every now and then you hear a branch snap off somewhere far off, crashing through the stillness like nature throwing a tantrum. You walk for a while, Mercy leading the way like some kind of reluctant druid. You wonder if you're about to be sacrificed. Eventually you reach a clearing where a crude shelter stands, a small log lean-to built against a ridge of rocks, half concealed by snowdrifts. There's a ring of stones where a fire was built and abandoned. A few rusted tools lie nearby, half buried. Mercy points to it. That's the old still, she says casually. You stare. As in alcohol? As in alcohol, she nods. Illegal. Hidden. And sometimes the only reason half the men around here make it through February. She starts clearing snow from the entrance. You jump in to help because standing still makes the cold bite harder. Together you uncover a crude wooden door that leads down a short slope into the earth. Inside it smells like, well, old fire, rotted wood, and what you can only describe as historical moonshine. There's no still left, just remnants. A few barrels, some scorched boards, bits of copper tubing curled like snakes, and bottles. Empty, of course. Used to be a secret, Mercy says, wiping her forehead with the edge of her scarf. Now it's just sad. You run your hand over one of the old barrels. What happened? Winter got bad. People drank more than they should. One man got lost on his way home, froze solid under a pine tree. They found him 2 weeks later with his boots off. Why were his boots off? She gives you a look. That's the thing. When you freeze, your brain starts to get confused. You think you're burning up. So people take their clothes off. Think they're going to cool down. You go quiet. She squats by a buried fire pit and starts to dig. There's a stash here, if they haven't found it already. And sure enough, a few minutes later, she pulls out a small jug sealed with wax. You raise your eyebrows. I thought you said this was illegal. Only if you get caught, she replies, brushing snow off the jug. You carry the jug back to the village, tucked under Mercy's arm like a loaf of extremely questionable bread. She doesn't say what she's going to do with it. You don't ask. Back in the common house, people are gathering wood, mending clothing, checking windows. There's tension. You've seen this rhythm before. You ask Ruth quietly what's going on. Another storm, she says. A real one. She says it like she's talking about a bear or an enemy scout, something with teeth. Everyone knows. Everyone's preparing. Later, after dinner, a single boiled egg, one hunk of bitter cabbage, and a sip of potato water. Yes, you read that correctly. Mercy brings out the jug. Not dramatically, not in ceremony, just places it on the table by the hearth, pulls out a cup and pours a splash. People line up silently. They're not trying to get drunk, that's not what this is. It's a small sip. A moment of fire in the chest. Something to remind you you're still alive, that your blood still moves. Susanna hands you a cup. You take a sip. It burns. Not in a bad way, though your eyes water and your throat tries to climb out of your body. But it's more than alcohol. It's heat. It's rebellion. It's defiance in a cup. You sit beside her afterwards, still coughing a little. She's not drinking, just staring at the fire. "You ever been so cold?" she says softly. "You think maybe it'd be better to just let go?" You don't answer right away. Then you say, "Yeah, I think that's why I'm here." She looks at you, just for a moment, then looks away. That night, as the wind starts to howl again, louder this time, angrier, you lie on your mat and feel that faint warmth in your chest. It won't last. It never does. But for now, it's something. The storm's coming, but so are you. It starts with a cough. Not yours this time, though yours is still lingering like an annoying side quest, but from somewhere near the far hearth. A sharp, wet, rattling cough that cuts through the morning quiet like an axe splitting frozen wood. You sit up, heart sinking before your brain even catches up. Everyone goes silent. Mercy is already moving across the common house before the second cough comes. Eliza follows. Thomas stands up so fast his stool tips backward. You know that sound. You've heard it in movies, in old documentaries, in your nightmares. It's sick. Not winter cold sick. Real sick. You join the others crowding around the small cluster of people who've gathered. A boy, maybe 9 or 10, is slumped against a bundle of blankets, face flushed red except for his lips, which are pale and cracked. His breath comes fast, too fast, chest rising like it's trying to escape his body. His mother kneels beside him, one hand on his forehead, the other gripping his small, trembling fingers. "It came on quick," she whispers. "Last night he was only warm. This morning he can barely breathe." Mercy nods slowly, her face grim. She places her palm on the boy's cheek, then pulls back the blanket and looks at his arms. You see it the moment she does, the spots. Tiny raised bumps, some red, some already clouding toward white. Chicken pox, you think at first, until you see the way everyone else reacts. Fear, not surprise, not confusion. Fear, smallpox. You take a single step back. Instinct. Modern instinct. Your brain screams at you to keep backing up, maybe out the door, maybe out of this century entirely, because you know what this disease does. But no one else moves. No one else even breathes wrong. This is winter. This is the 1700s. This is reality. And here, sickness is a member of the village. A familiar one. Mercy sends Eliza running for water, Thomas for cloths, Ruth for the kettle. Then she turns to you, her eyes sharp enough to cut ice. "You," she says, "don't touch anything." You nod instantly. Smallpox. Actual smallpox, and your stomach drops so hard it hits your shoes. Mercy leans over the boy again, examining the rash spreading across his torso. It's early yet. We'll know more by sundown. His mother breaks down crying. You turn away, because looking feels like betrayal. Not looking feels like cowardice. You do both anyway. But the morning must go on, sickness or no sickness. That's the insanity of colonial life. It doesn't stop for fear, or grief, or epidemics. You're sent to haul water, again. The cold feels crueler now, the bucket heavier, the path longer, every cough behind you echoes in your mind. When you return to the common house, the boy has been moved to a separate corner near the back wall. Blankets piled around him, a small barrier erected, not to keep him in, but to create a fragile psychological boundary for everyone else. No quarantine, not really, not like you're used to. Space is too small, families too tangled together. You settle near the fire, trying to warm your hands, but your chest feels hollow. It's the helplessness, the not knowing, the knowledge that one sickness can sweep through a whole village like a brush fire through dry grass. Susanna sits down beside you quietly. "You're scared," she says. You don't deny it. "You should be," she adds, voice soft. "But we've been through worse winters." You look at her. "Doesn't make this easier." "No," she says. but it makes us less likely to fall apart. You want to believe her. By mid-afternoon, the village is humming with tension. Some people avoid the common house entirely, choosing to work outside despite the cold. Others hover near Mercy, offering herbs, broth, prayers, anything they can. You decide to keep your distance. Not because you're heartless, but because you know what diseases love most: stressed bodies. And yours is already running on fumes, root vegetables, and fear. But when Eliza asks you to bring a jug of melted snow water to Mercy, you don't refuse. You carry it with shaking hands, approach the small curtained-off corner where the boy lies, and set the jug down gently. You glance at him. His eyes are half shut, his breathing shallow, his skin dotted with more blisters now, some swelling like tiny pearls filled with misery. Mercy wipes his forehead with a damp cloth. She doesn't look up. "This is the part," she says softly, "where we wait." You leave before she sees how hard you're swallowing. As evening comes, the wind dies completely, the village grows still, people move slower, talk quieter, sit closer to the fire. Dinner is thin again. Turnip broth, a crumble of salted pork shared between 5 people. No one complains. Hunger has become background noise. Susanna sits beside you, knee brushing yours, but neither of you says much. The glow from the hearth dances across her face, warm in the dimness, but her eyes are tired. When she finally speaks, it's barely above a whisper. "We've lost people to this before," you nod. "My older sister," she adds. 7. She says it the way you'd say, "It snowed last night." Not casual, just accepted, etched into her bones. "I'm sorry," you say. She shakes her head. "I'm sorry for the boy's mother." The two of you stare into the fire until the sparks start to fade. Night comes. Mercy moves from the sick corner to the fire and back again, as steady as the tide. Thomas stands watch outside, lantern swinging like a dim, tired star. The village seems to hold its breath. You lie on your mat, unable to sleep, listening to the soft murmurs, the shifting blankets, the faint rattle of the boy's breathing. Every few minutes you look over. Every time the fear gets a little sharper. This winter has teeth, cold teeth, hunger teeth, illness teeth. And tonight, you're reminded of the thing you forgot while falling into the rhythm of colonial life. Winter doesn't care how much you've adapted. It only cares how much you can endure. When morning comes, the first thing you hear is silence. No coughing, no shuffling, no murmurs near the hearth. You lie there, perfectly still, blinking at the rough-hewn beams overhead, feeling that strange, thick stillness pressing down on everything, like the snow has climbed into the room and is holding its breath with the rest of you. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Someone walks toward the back corner of the common house. You already know where they're going. You already know what they'll find. You sit up anyway, heart tight in your chest, as Mercy kneels beside the boy's mother. She pulls back the blanket. The boy is still. Too still. His mother lets out a quiet sound that's somehow louder than any scream. Mercy doesn't try to stop her. No one does. You look away and you're not the only one. The village just got a little smaller. They bury him in the frozen ground before noon. The grave is shallow. It has to be, with the earth half stone and the shovels not made for this kind of grief. Still, everyone helps. Even you, though your fingers go numb and your breath clouds the air in ragged huffs. You're handed a wooden board and a carving knife. "Name," Thomas says quietly. "Birth, if you know it." You ask the mother. She nods once. "Samuel, born 2 summers past." You scratch the name into the wood with hands that shake a little. The grave marker is simple, like all the others along the edge of the woods. Upright plank, one name, no dates. Just a name and the memory of breath that used to fog the windows. The villagers say prayers, some spoken aloud, others just mouthed. A few children place pine cones by the grave, which is apparently a tradition here. Something about guiding the spirit back to warmth. You stand there longer than you mean to. Then Ruth touches your shoulder. "Come on," she says. "We've got visitors." You blink. "Visitors?" She nods toward the edge of the village, and that's when you see him. A figure on foot, wrapped in deerskin and feathers, face painted, eyes sharp, walking calmly toward the gate like he belongs to the wind. You recognize the beads, the woven belt, the step, a visitor from the Lenape. He doesn't speak at first, just raises a hand in a slow, deliberate greeting. Thomas responds in kind, then gestures toward the meeting square. The man nods and follows. Everyone watches with cautious interest. You stand beside Ruth, who leans in and whispers, "He's been here before. Brings herbs, sometimes stories." "What's his name?" She shrugs. "We don't ask." Inside the square, he kneels by the fire pit and begins unpacking a small bundle, leather-wrapped, tied with a strip of dyed sinew. From it he removes several dried plants, some in twisted bundles, some in hollowed bark tubes. There's a smell that comes with it. Earthy, sweet, strange. Like smoke and honey had a baby and raised it in a pine forest. Mercy approaches, says something you don't catch. The man answers in English. His voice is calm, careful, like a stream just beginning to thaw. He offers her a wrapped leaf and they speak quietly. Then he stands, looks over the crowd, and finally, his eyes land on you. You freeze. He doesn't say anything, doesn't smile, just nods. Once, like he knows you. Then he motions for you to follow him. You look to Mercy, who gives you a, "well, go on" face. So you do. He leads you past the gates, into the woods, but only a short way, just far enough that the village fades a little behind you. There, he sits on a fallen log and gestures for you to do the same. You sit. He opens a pouch, pulls out something wrapped in bark. Thin slices of root, dried and dark. He hands you one. "Taste," he says. You do. It's bitter. Woody. Not entirely unpleasant. It makes your tongue tingle. "Black cohosh," he says. "Helps the lungs. Clears heat." You nod. "Mercy gave me something like this." "She does well," he replies. "But sometimes your body forgets what health feels like. You must remind it." You sit in silence for a while, chewing. The root gets softer. The flavour changes. Almost sweet near the end. Then he speaks again. "I've seen your face before." You turn. "You have?" "Not in this place," he says, "but in dream. You walked through fire. Snow fell on your shoulders, but it did not burn you." You smile nervously. "That's probably not me." He shakes his head. "You're from 2 times. Your stomach flips. He just looks at you, not accusing, just certain. "You come from far away," he says, "and yet you're meant to see this. All of this. The cold, the death, the fire. You carry the memory. You can't speak. Your tongue is dry. Not from the root." He doesn't push, just rises, brushes snow from his cloak and nods. "Stay warm," he says. "The wind has more to say." Then he walks away, silent as falling snow. You return to the village as dusk begins to fall. The fire burns high again. Another storm is coming. People gather close. Samuel's mother sits quietly near the wall, face unreadable. No one disturbs her. You sit beside Susanna, who leans against your shoulder and says nothing. You don't either. Dinner is a thin stew again, but it's hot, and someone passes you a sliver of apple, a treat, a memory of sweetness. As night falls, Mercy gives you a bark-wrapped packet of cohosh. "From our guest," she says. "Use it if your cough returns." You tuck it into your cloak pocket, heart still thudding, brain spinning with the Lenape man's words. 2 times, fire and snow. You dream that night of walking barefoot through snow that melts beneath your steps, and voices, always voices, whispering things you can't understand. But one phrase comes through clearly. "Stay warm, the wind is listening." The storm comes at midnight. It doesn't tiptoe in the way the others did. No polite rustling of branches, no light dusting of snowflakes that melt prettily on the window glass. No, this one punches through the darkness like a drunk grizzly with something to prove. The wind hits first, shrieking through the trees, bending them sideways, turning the palisade into a makeshift flute of misery. The shutters rattle so hard you're convinced they're about to rip right off and launch into the sky like medieval frisbees. The common house groans, not creaks, groans, like the logs themselves are remembering every winter they've survived and deciding they've had enough. And the snow, oh the snow, it doesn't fall, it attacks. You lie awake under your blanket burrito, feeling the cold seeping in at every edge. The fire's still burning. Ruth and Thomas are keeping it alive in shifts, but it's no match for what's happening outside. The air inside the room feels stretched, thin. Even your breath feels like it's been rationed. You pull your knees to your chest and try to think warm thoughts. Spoiler alert, they do nothing. By morning it's worse. The door won't open. Literally. You watch as Thomas throws his shoulder into it 3 times, grunts, and finally mutters something that you're 99% sure is a colonial swear word. The village has been buried. He motions for Ruth to grab the long-handled shovel, and the two of them begin digging. From inside. You help. Of course you help. It's not like you're going to sit back with your arms crossed, sipping thin broth and offering moral support. No, you grab the second shovel and go to work, throwing scoop after scoop of snow out through the narrow opening they've carved in the top of the doorframe. It's like trying to empty a bathtub with a spoon. And the snow keeps coming, pouring off the roof in wet chunks as the storm roars on. By noon, the path outside is clear enough for a single person to squeeze through. You pop out like a groundhog, breath catching in your throat. Everything's gone. Well, not gone exactly, but buried. The snow is up past your chest in some places. The roofs are white caps. The fences have vanished. You can barely see where the garden once was. The firewood stacks now reduced to suspicious bumps. The trees, twisted and frosted, look more like ancient sentinels than anything alive. The entire world is white and sharp and quiet. Not the peaceful quiet, the after quiet. You spend the day digging. You dig out the goat shelter, where the goats are somehow still alive and look deeply unimpressed by your late rescue. You dig out the path to the well. You dig out the side door of the blacksmith shop. You dig until your arms stop working and your back tries to unionize. Others are digging too. Mercy and Eliza hauling buckets of snow into barrels so it can melt for water. Jacob chopping firewood even though you're not entirely convinced he understands how axes work. And Susanna, moving like she was born in this storm. She meets your eyes once, wipes sweat from her brow with a mittened hand, and offers the tiniest grin. Still breathing, she calls. You lift your shovel like a toast. Barely. Good. We need the barely ones. That afternoon, Thomas calls a meeting. Everyone squeezes into the common house, steam rising from their coats, snow still stuck to boots and hoods. The fire's at full blaze now, fed with precious wood, but it's worth it. The cold inside is dangerous. Outside, it's a death sentence. He lays it out clearly. We've got enough dry wood for 4 more days. Water's not the issue. We've got snow. But food's running low. The traps are buried. The river's iced thick. We're going to need to ration harder. There are no gasps, no cries of panic, just quiet heads nodding. You know what that means. Less stew, more hunger, maybe no dinner at all. Someone mentions the chickens. Someone else reminds them the chickens are laying again. Then maybe we just eat the roosters. Everyone turns, and Susanna says, cool as ice. Then we lose the next generation of chickens. The room goes still. She's right, of course. And she just saved a bunch of dumb birds by making a logistical argument. You add that to the mental list of reasons she might be your favourite person in 2 centuries. Later, while people work on repairs and insulation, you help reinforce the common house walls. This involves cramming moss and mud into every crack between the logs. It's messy, cold, and smells a bit like compost mixed with desperation. You're elbow deep in half-frozen moss when Elijah appears beside you, humming something tuneless. You know, he says, I had a dream about this storm. You glance sideways. Of course you did. He leans against the wall, completely unhelpful. In the dream, the snow had hands. It covered things on purpose. It took them. You raise an eyebrow. So, snow monsters. He grins. No, just snow that's alive, like it knows where to press. You chuckle, even though your skin prickles a little. He walks off, still humming. That night, everyone gathers in the common house. No one dares sleep alone now. The fire roars. Bodies pile close. There's no stew tonight, just boiled root scraps, served with apology and silence. Susanna sits near you, back pressed against your side for warmth. You share your blanket. No words are exchanged. None are needed. Outside, the storm howls again. But you're not scared anymore. Not really. You've seen the worst it has to offer. And you're still breathing. Barely. But that still counts. By the 3rd day of snow burial, people stop checking the calendar. Not because they've forgotten what day it is, but because the day itself doesn't mean anything anymore. There's no difference between Monday and Thursday when you're trapped in a world made entirely of cold, exhaustion, and dried parsnips. Your entire reality has collapsed into 3 categories. 1, is the fire still going? 2, how bad does the wind sound today? 3, What are we eating, and can we pretend it tastes like food? Today you're on fire duty again, which sounds cozy in theory, but in practice means hauling half-frozen wood inside, feeding the flames, then crawling back under a scratchy wool blanket with soot-stained fingers and a core body temperature that's mostly theoretical. Ruth hands you a bowl of something that looks like soup but smells like dirt and old feet. Mushroom tea, she says flatly. You take a sip. Yep, that's fungus in water. Colonial cuisine, ladies and gentlemen, and there's not much talking anymore. Even Elijah, who once narrated his own chores like a bard in training, has gone mostly quiet. You hear him muttering to himself occasionally, words like fire dreams and watching woods, but no full speeches. Children are quieter too. That soft, tired kind of quiet where their energy is conserved entirely for survival. You watch one girl slowly roll a snowball back and forth in her hands without throwing it, as if that's the most stimulation her brain can handle. Even Mercy seems to have run out of energy to scold people. She walks like her boots are filled with rocks. The bruised sky outside casts her in grey. You find her at the hearth staring at the flames like she's looking through them. Is it always like this, you ask? She doesn't look at you. Only when it's bad. And this is bad. She finally turns. This is not the worst I've seen. Then she walks away. So, that's comforting. In the late afternoon, someone cries out from the watchtower. It's Jacob, of course, who seems to find any excuse to shout from high places, but this time his tone is urgent. He's not warning of wolves or ghosts. He's calling for help. You're outside before your brain even fully processes the cold. The wind bites immediately. You scramble up the side of the tower with Ruth right behind you, boots thudding against the icy wood. "What is it?" she shouts over the wind. Jacob points. "Something out there, moving." You squint into the blizzard. Nothing. He points again. To the south, near the big oak. And this time, you do see something. A figure, small, alone, moving slowly through the waist-deep snow. Not a threat. A person. Ruth's already climbing down. You follow. They meet her just outside the edge of the village. It's a man, middle-aged, frostbitten, barely standing. He's wrapped in furs, but they're thin, soaked. His face is nearly blue. One glove is missing. His eyes are wild. He collapses before he even says a word. You help carry him inside, where Mercy immediately starts shouting orders, lighting a fire under the hearth kettle and sending Thomas for clean blankets. The rest of the village crowds close, their breath fogging the air, their eyes wide. They don't recognize him. He's not from here. But he was someone once. It takes nearly an hour before he's warm enough to speak. He sips hot water slowly, cradling the cup like it might disappear if he blinks too long. When he finally talks, his voice is a rasp. Dead. They're all dead. The room stills. Thomas crouches beside him. Who? What happened? The man shakes his head. Snow came faster than we thought. We were ready for winter, but not for this. He names a town. None of you know it. It's south, near the edge of the frontier. We lost the roof during the second storm. After that, just stopped. Stopped what? Susanna asks gently. Everything, he whispers. Talking, moving, hoping. And then the worst part. I left because I thought there might be something better out here. He looks around the room, the fire, the food, the half-frozen blankets, and for a moment, something like relief flickers in his eyes. Turns out, there is. The man sleeps near the hearth that night, wrapped in every spare scrap of warmth the village can spare. You lie nearby, unable to stop staring at his weather-beaten face. Not from fear, from recognition. He looks like what winter does to a soul, tired, shaken, but not broken. Around midnight you wake up. The fire's low, the common house is dark, but outside, something's glowing. You get up, quietly, and peek through the shutters. The snow is still falling, thick and slow, but the trees are lit, faint as moonlight, but glowing, soft and silver, like each branch is laced with some ancient frost that remembers how to shine. It doesn't look real, but it doesn't feel threatening, it just is. You press your hand to the cold glass, watching it sparkle. Maybe Elijah was right. Maybe the snow does know where to press, but maybe, just maybe, it also remembers when to show you beauty. Even now, even here, even when you're running out of days. The storm breaks the next morning. Not gently, not with birdsong and golden sunlight, but with the exhausted exhale of a sky that's finally finished its tantrum. It's not warm, not even close, but the wind dies, the snow stops, and for the first time in days the sun tries its best to punch through the clouds, like a half-hearted apology. You step outside into a world that doesn't look real. Everything is smoothed over, clean, blanketed in pristine drifts that glitter like crushed glass. The trees still lean under the weight, but there's no more groaning, just stillness. You breathe in, and the cold hits you like a slap. But the air smells different. Crisper, cleaner, less angry. The storm is over. You survived. The whole village stirs. People emerge like animals blinking at the light. No one says anything at first. They just look around, at the quiet white hills, the sagging roofs, the paths that have completely vanished, and share glances that say, "We're still here." Susanna's the first to break the silence. "Time to dig out the chicken coop again," she mutters, trudging off with a shovel. Elijah follows, carrying an axe slung over his shoulder. "If the chickens lived, I'm naming the toughest one after myself." You pitch in, because that's what everyone does now. There's no need to ask. The goats survived. The chickens, most of them, did too. One of the roosters is missing a few feathers and looks personally offended by the ordeal, but he's alive. No one's laughing, not really, but there are half smiles, grunts of relief, even a low whistle when someone uncovers the tool shed. The village takes stock, does repairs, starts moving again. The rhythm is back, and it's not hope exactly, and it's momentum, and that's enough. Later that day, you help Susanna repair the lean-to near the edge of the wood line, the little shack where they keep extra firewood and tools. Half of it collapsed during the storm, and she's determined to fix it before nightfall. You work together in silence for a while, the only sounds being the creak of wood, the scrape of a handsaw, and the steady thump of her hammer as she secures new support beams. Finally she says, "You did all right in the storm." You glance over. Didn't freeze, didn't cry. "I call that a win." She smirks. "Most people can't handle one colonial winter. You made it through the worst one in 10 years. You raise an eyebrow. "That's supposed to make me feel better." She shrugs. "You didn't die. That's always the bar." You chuckle, but deep down you know she's right. You've adapted. You can feel it, not in your muscles, which are sore and stiff, or in your fingers, which are cracked and bandaged, but in your mind. You don't wake up surprised anymore. You expect the cold, you expect the work, and now you expect to keep going. That night the common house feels warmer, not just from the fire, but from something in the air. Someone found a few leftover cranberries frozen in the root cellar, and Eliza makes a tart with them, barely sweetened, but still a tart, and that alone makes people sit straighter. It's a little celebration in a world where most days feel like mild survival contests. You take a bite and it's tart enough to pucker your face, but it's real, it's different, it tastes like trying. The village hums with quiet life, not loud, not joyful, but alive. That matters more. After dinner, you sit with Mercy by the fire. She's mending gloves, threading thick sinew through leather like she's been doing it since birth. You're not even sure she knows you're beside her until she says, "The man who came through the storm, he'll leave soon." You nod. "Will he be okay?" "Not here," she replies, "but he'll make it somewhere if he keeps moving." She doesn't say it, but you hear the message behind her words, "So will you." You help her finish the last pair, and when you're done, she hands them to you. "Yours now," she says simply. "You earned them." You slide them on. They fit perfectly. Later that evening, Thomas stands at the front of the room. Not officially, not with ceremony, just quietly, hands folded behind his back. "We'll hold a proper gathering tomorrow," he says, "to remember Samuel, and to thank the storm for ending." You blink. "Thank it?" Elijah nods from the corner. "You always thank the thing that didn't kill you." Ruth adds, "Even if it tried." It's strange, but it makes sense. In this world, survival isn't just physical, it's spiritual. You keep death close, but you don't invite it in. Not without acknowledgement, not without saying, "I saw you, and I'm still here." That night you lie awake longer than usual, staring up at the dark ceiling. The wind is gone, the cold has softened. You listen to the slow breathing of the people around you, your people. You don't belong here, not really. You're a visitor from another time, another place, another everything. But you've chopped their wood, shared their food, shoveled their snow, breathed their air. You've slept beside them during storms and eaten roots with names you still can't pronounce. And you're still breathing. So maybe you belong just enough. You close your eyes and dream, not of home, but of firelight, frost, and the faint taste of cranberries on your tongue. You wake to music, not a flute, not a fiddle, just humming. Low, layered, reverent. The kind of humming that makes you think of churches and ghosts and the oldest kind of grief. It's Ruth. She's standing by the fire, slowly stirring a pot, her voice wrapped around some wordless tune that flows like water around stone. Others begin joining in, one by one, as they wake and realise today isn't like the others. Today is Samuel's Day. No one calls it that. It doesn't have a name. It's just the day they bury a child they barely knew but fully mourn. And they mark it not with speeches or declarations, but with hands that work, voices that hum, and food that carries weight. Eliza hangs a pine branch over the hearth. No one explains why, but you get the feeling it means something. Maybe protection, maybe memory, maybe both. The service begins at midday. The sun is high, casting cold silver light across the snow that still blankets the village like a warning. A path is cleared to the graveyard. The wind is calm. The air stings your nose but doesn't threaten your life for once. Everyone walks in silence. You follow Susanna, who wears her hair braided today with a strip of red-dyed cloth tied around her wrist. She doesn't speak, just walks, and you match her pace because this isn't about words. They gather around the grave, Samuel's small, snow-covered resting place marked with the name you carved. Mercy stands at the front. Not like a priest, just as someone who knows what it means to carry sorrow and still light fires in the morning. She speaks. Her voice is quiet, slow, and deep as the woods beyond the village. We give back to the earth what she gave us, we hold on to what he taught us, and we carry him forward in the space he made. That's it. No sermon, no cries, just a pause, as if the whole forest is listening. Then people begin placing small tokens on the grave. Pine cones, bits of cloth, a carved spoon, a feather. You feel awkward at first. You didn't know the boy well, but you reach into your coat pocket and find something. The cohosh bark, wrapped in old paper, a gift from the Lenape man, protection. You set it gently beside the marker. After the burial, the village returns to the common house, and then the real ritual begins. Food, not a feast. You're far from having those. But today, the best of what's left is laid out. Salted venison, a boiled apple, split into thin slices, thin cakes made from acorn flour and sorghum, drizzled with a syrup so faint it might be imaginary. It's not about the flavours, it's about the effort. Susanna sits beside you, passing you half her apple slice without saying anything. You give her the warmest piece of your cake. This is how you say, I see you, I share this. No speeches, just sharing. That night, Elijah pulls out the flute again. He plays something slow, sad, but not in a crushing way. More like a lullaby for something that's been set down gently. People hum along. You lie close to the hearth, arms folded beneath your head, watching the fire flicker up the logs and trying not to drift off too fast. You want to stay awake a little longer tonight, because today was a heavy day, but it was also proof. Proof that even here, in a winter that almost broke you, life doesn't just continue. It remembers, it pauses, it honours, and then it keeps going because it must. Later, Susanna leans over and whispers, Do you remember the first day you got here? You nod, smiling. I remember not being able to feel my feet, or breathe right. And now look at you, she murmurs, fire tender, goat milker, official holder of the ugliest mittens in the colony. You glance down at your mittens, still ugly, still warm. You made it, she adds. You're about to say something back, something that might in another time count as romantic when you both freeze. A sound, not a cough, not a branch, something outside. Movement. Everyone goes still. Even the fire feels like it quiets down. Thomas rises silently and opens the shutter just a crack. You catch the glance between him and Ruth. Serious, sharp. Then you hear it too. The unmistakable bone-deep crack of wood under pressure. Not wind, not snow, footsteps. Thomas speaks low. Someone's coming. Mercy grabs her coat. So does Ruth. Elijah grabs a pitchfork. You, of course, grab your shovel, because apparently that's just what you do now. Everyone moves with calm urgency, bundling, checking windows, watching the tree line, and then they appear, 2 figures, dragging a sled, not trappers, not strangers, children, covered in furs too big for them, eyes wild with hunger and panic. The door swings open. Mercy's there before anyone else. The taller of the two kids, a girl maybe 13, collapses just inside the door. The younger one, maybe 7, won't let go of the sled. It's carrying something, not food, not furs, a man, frozen, clearly dead, but with one hand still clutched around a string of wooden beads. The girl gasps out a name. It doesn't mean anything to anyone here, but the look on her face says everything. They've come from somewhere even deeper in the woods, somewhere even harder hit, and they've brought winter with them. Again. The door shuts behind them. The fire grows higher. The village closes ranks, not from fear, from instinct. Because this is what they do. They make room. They share what little they have. They carry each other, and tonight you're part of that. Completely. Finally. Winter isn't over, but neither are you. The next morning dawns with an eerie brightness. The kind of brightness that only comes after a night of cold so sharp it feels like it tried to slice the moon in half. The snow outside is blinding, crisp, packed flat by wind and time. It reflects the sunlight with a smug little shimmer, like it knows it's beautiful and deadly. Inside the common house, the air is thick with low murmurs and tension, like the moment before a knife hits the cutting board. The children are still asleep by the hearth. The girl, Anna, has one arm protectively slung over her little brother, who hasn't spoken a word since arriving. He's curled up so tight you wonder if he even knows where he is. Every now and then he startles in his sleep. Tiny jerks, like a bird trying to fly out of a closed cage. The sled they came in on is still parked near the door, stained with whatever's left of their father's last desperate journey. No one says it, but everyone knows. This family came from another village, and that village didn't make it. Not through the storm, not through the winter. You made it. They didn't. And now you all have to decide what to do with that. You're sent to help chop wood with Elijah. He hasn't said much since the newcomers arrived. You expect his usual humming or cryptic snow monster monologues, but instead he's just focused. His axe moves in steady, efficient arcs. No flair, no sass. You match his pace, kindling each log into manageable pieces, stacking them along the wall. Finally he speaks. Too many ghosts this year. You don't say anything, and he glances at you. We make room for the living, but we carry the dead. Then, as if realising that was a little too poetic, he adds, also, I think those kids have lice. You blink. He shrugs. Just saying. I'll keep my hat on. Back inside, Mercy is talking with Thomas and Ruth, speaking in low tones you can't fully hear, but the gist is clear. Supplies are thinner now, and 2 more mouths, 3, counting the ghost on the sled, tip the math from tense to tight. Thomas wants to send a small group to the next settlement to trade. Ruth agrees. Mercy says nothing for a while, then finally, I'll go. The room goes quiet and everyone looks at her. She doesn't blink. I've done the route. I know the snowpack. I know the hills. Thomas frowns. You're needed here. And I'll be back, she says, calm as ever. But we need salt and flour and more than 2 jars of anything pickled. She's not wrong, but she's not exactly safe either. The woods are still thick with ice. The roads are half-imagined trails. There could be fallen trees, wolves, frostbite, snowdrifts deep enough to swallow a house. And still, she's going. She looks at you. I'll take them with me. You blink. The kids? She nods. They need to be somewhere that isn't haunted. Susanna speaks up from the corner. And if that place doesn't exist? Mercy smiles sadly. Then we build one. By mid-afternoon, the plan is set. Mercy will leave at first light. She'll take Anna and her brother, and she'll return in 3 days. 4, if snow buries the trail. You help prepare the sled. It's not fancy. Just a platform of old wood lashed together with rawhide strips and prayer. You tie down 2 bundles of supplies, blankets, a jar of tallow, 3 hard biscuits, and the last of the dried apples. There's no spare horse, so she'll walk. Or drag. When you ask if she needs a coat, she smirks. I am a coat. Night falls. Again. But this one feels different. It's not the end of a storm. Not the middle of one. It's the night before a choice. Everyone gathers close to the fire, not to eat, but just to be. Susanna sits beside you, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Would you go? She asks suddenly. You glance at her. Where? With her. Away. Somewhere else. You don't answer right away, because this isn't about Mercy. It's about you. Could you leave now? You've suffered here, nearly frozen, starved, grieved, but you've also learned, adapted, connected. I don't know, you say honestly. She nods. That's good, she whispers. Means you have something to lose now. Mercy doesn't sleep that night. You hear her moving near the door, checking the sled, double-knotting rope, packing and repacking the small leather pouch she wears around her neck. Inside it, are herbs, matches, and something wrapped in linen, or you don't ask what. She sees you watching, and for the first time in weeks she smiles without weight. You've done well here, you scoff. I still don't know how to tell a turnip from a rock. Neither do half the kids born here, she replies. Then, when I come back, I expect to see that fire still burning. You nod. Then, because you mean it, you say, be safe. And she replies, always, but never careful. They leave at dawn. You stand beside Thomas, Ruth and Susanna, watching them vanish into the frost-glittering trees. The kids ride the sled. Mercy pulls it with the calm strength of someone who's stared down storms and decided to keep walking anyway. No goodbyes, no waves, just footsteps, and cold, and the knowledge that this village is changing again, because winter never stops. It just shifts. That night, with the village quieter and smaller, you light the fire yourself. You stack the logs carefully. You coax the flame until it dances, and you sit beside it, watching, waiting, surviving. It's not over, but neither are you. The days stretch thin after Mercy leaves. It's not just that she's gone, it's that everything feels quieter without her. Like the air got sucked out of the common house, and no one has quite figured out how to breathe normally again. The fire still burns, the chores still get done, but something invisible has shifted. Ruth takes charge, but not like Mercy. Ruth leads from the shadows, assigning tasks with brief nods and curt glances. Thomas handles the heavier labour, falling into a rhythm that looks more like muscle memory than intention. And you just keep going. You shovel paths that stay clear for all of 4 minutes. You gather kindling, hoping the trees haven't all frozen solid. You patch a hole in the roof of the goat shelter, even though the goats continue looking at you like you're the dumbest creature alive. And every time you pause, every time you sit still, there's only one question swirling in your head. Will she come back? The answer, like everything in winter, doesn't come easily. Or on time. 3 days pass and then 4. On the 5th day, a storm stirs again. Not a full-blown blizzard, but enough to send wind clawing at the windows and make everyone double-check the firewood pile. You sleep lightly that night, your dreams flickering with images of broken sleds and paths buried too deep. Then, on the 6th morning, Ruth wakes you with a hand on your shoulder. They're here. You scramble to the edge of the village in half-laced boots, breath fogging ahead of you like smoke from your chest. And there they are, Mercy, Anna, her brother, and the sled. They look like war survivors, which in a way they are. Mercy's cheeks are raw with windburn. The boy's face is tucked deep in her coat. Anna walks behind them, wrapped in a blanket, dragging a second bundle behind the sled. A bag. A full bag. When they reach the gates, Mercy finally lets go of the rope and says, "We brought bread," and collapses. You rush forward. So does Susanna. So does everyone. It takes hours to fully unpack the sled, settle the kids back in, and thaw Mercy enough for her to speak in full sentences. But when she does, it's with her usual dry calm. "They're rationing too," she says, sitting by the fire, her hands wrapped around a hot cup of bean broth. But they had flour, and a few things to trade. She opens the bag. Inside, 2 small sacks of flour, a twist of dried herbs, a jar of salt, and, yes, a wrapped bundle of actual bread. Slightly frozen, slightly stale. Absolutely glorious. Thomas takes one look at the haul and whistles low. "We can stretch that." And just like that, the village breathes again. That night is different. That night they make cakes. They're barely sweet, slightly chewy, and cooked unevenly over the hearthstone. But they smell like heaven. That earthy, toasty, yeasty scent fills the common house until your stomach has its own heartbeat. You eat slowly, savouring every bite. Not because you don't know when you'll get more, but because this one came back with Mercy. And something about that makes it taste better than anything you've had in months. After dinner, the village doesn't disperse like usual. They linger, not from duty, from want. There's a hum in the air, not music, not words, just a soft presence, a togetherness. And you realise something that creeps up quietly. It's almost spring. Not officially. The ground is still frozen, the trees are still bare, the wind still bites, but the sun lingers a little longer now. The nights aren't quite as cruel, and the food, well, there's bread. That means something. You glance over at Susanna. She's watching you. You smile. She doesn't. But she doesn't look away. Later, as people roll into their blankets and the fire settles to a warm, drowsy glow, you lie beside her in the hush of the common house. "Can I ask you something?" you whisper. Richie nods. "When does it get easier?" She's quiet for a moment, and then, it doesn't. But you do. The next morning the world is still there, and the snow is still deep, the woodpile is still shrinking, the goats are still jerks, but there's no storm, no sickness, no funeral, just sun, just work, just one more morning where you wake up and say, I'm still here. And that's enough. You've learned what it means to wait, to carry, to mourn without stopping. You've earned your place, not because you conquered the winter, but because you endured it. Now, as the days stretch just a little longer, and the mornings don't hurt quite so much, you can feel it. A shift. It's in the way the wind moves, in the dripping icicles, in the sound of boots on slush instead of snow. Spring is near. You'll still freeze, still ache, still dream of better meals and warmer beds, but now you know the rhythm, you know the people, you know how to keep the fire alive. And maybe, just maybe, you know a little more about yourself than you did when you landed here, half frozen, confused, and convinced you wouldn't last the week. But look at you now. You've survived smallpox, you've helped bury the dead, you've watched strangers become kin, and snow become something less terrifying and more known. You've chopped wood, you've made friends, you've eaten root stew so many times you could probably start a fan club. And soon the ground will thaw, seeds will be planted, new dangers will come, yes, but so will new days, new warmth, new hope. And no matter what century you call home, no matter what storms you face, there's something ancient, eternal, and deeply human about learning to live through winter. You're part of that now, a survivor, a settler, a strange visitor from the future who somehow found a place in the past. The fire's low, the sky outside is turning gold, and your blanket's pulled high up around your shoulders. You made it. Now sleep, dream of Thor, and let the cold wait for someone else.